Yay, live on YouTube.
No, we're not yet though. Hold on, it's preparing the live stream.
It says it's on.
Wait, really? You see it?
Well, no, just I don't see it on this yet, but but I see up in the upper corner it says live on YouTube.
Let me see. Hold on. I'll tell you right now. Loading something though.
I don't see it on this yet, but it says I see
no, we're live, Russ.
It's live on YouTube.
We're live.
Let me see. Hold on. There we go.
All right. So let me. You got to lower your.
We're live, Russ. Live on YouTube. We're live.
All right, guys, bear with us, guys, because we're starting it.
So let me. Okay. You got to lower your. We're live, Russ. Live on YouTube. We're live. All right, guys, bear with us, guys, because we're starting.
Hold on.
So
let's do. All right, can you guys hear us at all or no? Let's do that.
I can hear you. I can't. I'm not plugged in on the.
All right, so I got the chats in.
Okay, now I can see us.
Okay, so let me just see if I can get the chats here. So, hello. So what I'm going to do is to make it easier for us. I'm going to do the. Because you got to get the chats. So hold on. I want to make sure I get the. That's the one thing. I see the chat.
You know what I'm going to do here, Anthony? I'm going to turn my laptop up and I'm going to turn my phone all the way down.
All right, so they can hear us, and I see the chats here. So let me just do a test. Okay, so let's give this a shot. It's our first time ever doing this. Hello, everyone. Where is everyone from? Let me just do a test. All right, let's put this to a test. Hey, Russ, if you have your sound on, you got to lower it.
I'm going to turn my sound all the way down.
Yeah, turn that all the way down. And okay, so that looks good. We got Alaska on board right now, Louisiana. Guys, just bear with us. It's our first time going live, so we're just trying to figure out. I want to make sure I see your chats. So give me a second. That's the key. The key is the interaction here. So I want to make sure I get your chats. So hold on. Trying to figure out. I want to make me just give me a second. That's the key. That's the key is the interaction. Okay, Russ, if you have your volume on, Russ, you got to lower it, Russ.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to turn it off right now.
So when you lower it, if you have your volume on, Russ, you got to lower it, Russ.
I know.
Okay, I'm in good position now. I have the comments right in front of me, and Russ, can you just give me a test sound? You good? All right, Russ, I don't got your volume, Russ. Russ, I don't got your volume. I can't hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Okay, how about now?
I got you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, so I was reading. I asked people where they were from. Again, we're just doing a test run. We have 9 people signed on. We have Aurora, Colorado, Alberta, Canada, Georgia, Denver, Colorado, Texas, Alaska, Louisiana. So we have a good group here. So I guess you want to do a little bit about ourselves. So Russ, you want to give a little bit about yourself? Hey, Russ, you got to lower the volume on your stuff. So I guess you want to do a little bit about ourselves. So Russ, you want to give a little bit about yourself?
Oh, absolutely. So my name is Russ Hamilton.
Hey, Russ, you got to lower the volume on your stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, Russ, can you lower the volume from yours or no?
Yeah, I can't. You know what I'm going to have to do is I think I'm going to have to go get a headset real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay, that's fine.
Hey, Russ, can you lower the volume from yours or no? I can't, because what it wants to do is it still has to use the speaker.
Okay, that's fine.
So hold on, I'll be right back.
All right, guys, so he's going to get a headset. So a little bit about me while we wait, guys. Bear with us. It's our first time ever going live, so we're trying to get used to the kinks. We never did this before. Oh, look, we have Hawaii. So a little bit about me. I got about 17, 18 years in the profession. I'm on the administrative end. if you will. I started my career as an officer, worked my way up as a sergeant, and then now my title would be a superintendent now. I was an officer at a female facility for 8 years and change. Then I worked at a male facility as a sergeant. All my male facilities were max facilities technically. And I guess that's my career in a nutshell. I have a very good respect for those that work the front line because I have, yes, worked on the front line. I believe it's a job that's very noble, and I believe it's a job that people don't understand. So the reason why, I'll give you a little bit of why I started Tier Talk. Just give me a second. We got Russ back. I'm just going over myself first, Russ, and then we'll go over you. Now, hold on. So the reason why, I'll give you a little bit of why I started Tier Talk. Just give me a second. I'm just going over myself first, Russ, and then we'll go over you.
Copy.
Hold on. All right. All right, Russ. All right, Russ, can you speak? I got you. I can hear you. Just doing a test sound. Can you speak?
Okay, we're in there now. I'm
Okay.
like a couple seconds behind you on this sound here.
All right, we'll figure it out.
Okay, 10-4.
All right, but just a test. Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
All right. All right. So just a little bit about how I started or why I started Tier Talk, just to let people kind of get a taste of it. You know, I used to work for a magazine. It's a law enforcement magazine, and they gave me the opportunity to create a radio show, which I thought was needed. So I named it Tier Talk, first name that came to my mind. And that show started. I've been doing Tier Talk now for 5 or 6 years. Eventually Corrections One picked it up, and I did it as a way to get people to understand the profession. Again, I don't think people understood the profession. They kept on bastardizing it, and I wanted to give people the truth. I believe that their perception was very twisted. In the course of doing Tier Talk, we wound up doing a lot of training videos, talked about what's trending, but the main mission was to give people a voice, and that's what I've always tried to do. So as I said, even though I've created this platform, the platform is available for anybody to come on and speak your mind. If you want to share a story, if you want to share an experience, whatever the case may be, that's what this platform is about. The thing about corrections is corrections is so diverse that there's not one expert in corrections. There's just so many facets to corrections that you have to open up a venue and you have to allow people to come in and speak. So with that said, the big part of this venue is to make sure that people understand the profession from the people who walk the walk. So far, I've had good guests like Russ, Connie Eileen, Gary York, Gary Cornelius, William Young. I mean, a lot of people, Louis Soto, NJACA. You know, we do what we can to get people a better understanding of this profession, but there is an effort here also to create that middle road. Right now, a lot of changes are obviously facing towards rehabilitation. So my goal has always been to balance rehabilitation with safety and security, to let people know that there is no rehabilitation without the brave men and women that walk that front line. And that really does include all correctional staff, because we don't have any successes unless we create an environment to be successful in. So custody is kind of like the canvas of the picture that we're painting, but we all have to realize that we have to move together as one. It's not an isolated mission. We have to communicate. We have to work together. It's a collective mission. And I want people to kind of have respect for each other, get an understanding of what each other's role is. The sad thing is that when I first started doing this, I did what I could to bring respect to the profession from the outside in. I was doing it backwards for many years. I needed to build respect for ourselves first and let that respect manifest out. And that's my key. That's my key now. I figure once we get to the point where we appreciate each other and we have respect for each other, that cross-perspective training, whatever we have to do to build that bridge, I will tell you something, guys. Once we do that, the power that will come across will be a profession that people will start realizing, like, this is a legit profession. And the people that work this profession, they're noble, and it'll bring about the respect we need and the recognition. That's the key. And that's kind of the basis of why I did this channel. And then obviously I'm learning something new every day, not just from the people I have on my show, but from you guys who participate in the community. I owe you guys a lot. So thank you. Now, Russ, what do you got, Russ?
Oh, okay. I'm getting confused between between these two things here. So anyway, just real quick, I'm Russ Hamilton. I did 27 years with California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And then I did an additional almost 3 years in a juvenile justice detention center in California. So anyway, my ballywick, so to speak, has always been in the security part of things with regard to gangs and interdiction of contraband, and just anything that I could do day in and day out to make my facility, essentially, man, I'm sorry, this is going back and forth here, to make my facility a safer place to work, a safer place to function. And so anyone, I think, that has seen the stuff that I do on Tier Talk, the stuff that I do on Keepers of Chaos, I think will understand a little bit of what it is that I like to focus on. Complacency, finding weapons, trying to get information out there about gangs, ways to have safer policies, way to understand the policies that you have, how to understand the law, how to understand case law, and just basically anything that I can get that'll fit in my wheelhouse. I love to chop it up, talk about it, and try and present people with the best content that I possibly can.
By the way, Russ, you're amazing. So basically what we've done with Tier Talk, and again, guys, whenever you have questions, send it our way, is we're trying to build a balance. So basically, having a career on the administrative level, I'm pretty high up. So I get to see the bigger picture, but I also work the front line. So the key here, working with the front line, is the fact that I appreciate the hard work and the specific work of that front line. That's why it's good to have people from the front line on, because they can really give you a specific picture, where in my case, I'm kind of a little bit removed, so it's more general. But having said that, the key is to bring everybody together as one and automatically see the big picture. When I first started doing this, if you notice that my vision was very myopic, it was very custody oriented. And then I started seeing, the left and right. I started looking to see how everything starts to work together as one. And I started having a greater appreciation for the profession as a whole. And I think that kind of brought up the evolution of where Tier Talk is today. And I think that's what kind of makes the show very dynamic, because I think sometimes we don't even realize what the agency's true functions are. So if you ever get a chance, try to talk to as many people as you can, because when you start to move up, you start to interact with these other departments more. And the more you know at the front line, the better you'll be as a supervisor. Now, we are getting some questions coming through, Russ. So I'm going to ask the first question. It comes from Lab Girl. How was the juvenile camps? Heard they're very violent.
I think that in that respect with juvenile camps, I was really lucky. I was actually one of the smallest juvenile facilities in the United States. It was a brand new facility, and it was a brand new department. And so we were blazing all kinds of trails. And I'll tell you this, the thing about juveniles that you have to remember is that everything that drives them is all about emotion. So it's very much it's very prone to violence. The thing about working in that environment is trying to put the kids in a position where instead of failing, they're able to, come along and succeed. And I found it very rewarding, but larger facilities, larger departments, they spend a lot more time having to deal with that violent aspect. And so, if you're in a larger facility, a larger department, it's a lot harder to maintain and to be able to impact these kids positively. And so, I can't speak too much to how it is, but I have a lot of friends that work in the juvenile departments. Yeah, there's a lot of violence there, but it's also probably the most rewarding correctional experience that you can get, because you can't save them all, but you can save a few, and that's what I found.
I dealt with a few juveniles when I worked in the female facility. I had some, I think the lowest I had was 13. I haven't said that I didn't work with them on your level, but I did work with a few. I found the juveniles to be very persistent. And when you leave emotionally drained. because they kind of test you more. I mean, believe it or not, for the most part, when I worked with the men, you give out orders, for the most part, nothing's 100%. They kind of do their thing and they keep moving. Women and juveniles tend to ask why. And sometimes the why starts to get frustrating because they're not asking why to understand the order. They're asking why because they're questioning the order. So you always have to keep your cool. And I remember one scenario in specific where, again, I was working with the female population, but it was a younger population. And there was one female who just always tested my buttons. And I was in maybe my first couple of weeks of the, like straight out, like first couple of weeks of the job. So what happened was, as I was, dealing with her, the other officer was seeing my interactions with this individual, and he saw that she was kind of starting to push my buttons. Like I would give her an order, and then the problem was that she would question the order. And even though she was still doing it, guys, by the way, she was still doing the order, she was questioning it, and I didn't like that. I took that as a challenge to my authority. And we wind up having this back and forth, me and this female inmate. Now, the senior officer, sometimes I like, some senior officers are great people. They want you to learn. Some senior officers kind of just, watch you crumble. But this senior officer was an amazing individual. He watched in the background to see how my interaction was, to see how I was dealing with her. And then when it was all over, because I mean, she had got me aggravated, but I thought that, she did the order. And basically that at this point right now, she's doing what's expected of her. I win the argument. So he calls me into the office and he's like, hey, Ganj, how do you think you handled that? And I said, well, I think I handled it pretty well. She did what she had. He goes, Ganji, the whole time, the reason why she was challenging your order is because there was a whole mess of inmates behind her, motivating her to keep the fight going. He goes, had you taken the inmate aside separately, it would have been a different outcome. So the next day I brought the inmate into my office. And when she came in, she was like exhausted. Like we didn't want to have this back and forth. So I took, one of the things I took about is when dealing with an inmate, I don't deal with them in front of other inmates. I think if I'm going to be constructive and really try to get my order across, but if I have to give advice on what to do to give it, I don't give it to them in front of other inmates. I don't correct them in front of other inmates. I bring them alone and you find out that you wind up dealing with a totally different inmate. And I think that works very well with juveniles. When you're dealing with juveniles, try to get them in a one-on-one setting if you get a chance. Of course, safety in mind, but if you start trying to address them in front of their peers, they're going to challenge you because, again, they're just being motivated by the other inmates. You pull them aside, you're going to find out you're dealing with a totally different individual. Correct, Russ?
Oh, absolutely. It's all about essentially saving face. They'll push you to the limit, and you try and do something in front of their peers, and you're going to do nothing but meet resistance because there's no chance for them to back down in that. And then what you've done is you've painted yourself into a corner.
Yeah. So again, and guys, you know what? Again, just with inmates, with juveniles, you got to be careful because obviously all eyes are on those juveniles. So you cannot let them push your buttons. They will test you, and you do one thing wrong, you will have everybody all over you. There's zero tolerance when it comes to dealing with juveniles. They're very well protected. So don't let them push your buttons. If you work in a juvenile facility, you have to have thick skin. I give credit to anybody that works in a juvenile facility. It will test you. Literally, sometimes you'll get home and even want to punch a wall, but do your best you can to stay calm and collective. If they know that they're pushing your buttons, they'll keep on pushing it, and they don't care. They do not care. So always keep your cool, always remain professional. One of the next questions we got, and I want to run it to you, Russ, comes from Alexander Carnes, and he goes, he's still a cadet, and he's not allowed to touch inmates yet. He goes, what's the best way to handle 7 inmates getting in your face with no other COs around to help?
Wow, that's okay. Let me take this from the perspective of what ought to be going on with the cadet in the presence of 7 inmates with no one else there. That should not be happening. Now, maybe it is because this may be some, backwoods measure of what they think corrections is about, but I would never leave a cadet in the presence of any number of inmates without having another officer present. So I guess what I should do here is I should address what he should do, even though what they're doing in this situation, if that's occurring, isn't the correct way to be training up an officer. I would not do this to a cadet. What I would say is, you know, I would, if you don't have a way to call for help, you need to egress out of that area and let people know and come back in force and take care of those inmates, because that is not, and that's not an acceptable thing that's going on there. And so you need to, those inmates definitely need to be reined in. There's no doubt about it. And you have to go back in force and find out what's going on, because that's off the chain there. I would never do this in a training scenario with any cadet.
Yeah, let me add something to that. First of all, because you mentioned it's in the mess hall. For me, I think walk-in mess halls are antiquated now, because you have a lot of surveillance equipment, stuff that you're actually able to probably get a better perspective of by watching it safely from cameras. I was actually on Fox News, and we discussed walking in mess halls. And I know some people like it. It's an old school method, so I don't want to. I know that presence matters. So you know, again, nothing's 100%. But for me, when I was a supervisor, the safety of my officers, we had cameras, and if we had to get this, you know, it would be more controlled. But I think walking in the mess halls now it's very antiquated. I think that with all the surveillance equipment you have out now, you can actually provide a lot more safety by being removed, secured, and if something happens, the response can be controlled. You're not just going to run right in. You know what I mean? I think that the mess hall, believe it or not, is when for those that walk the mess halls, it's when we're the most vulnerable. It's the biggest amount of numbers against the shortest amount of staff. And the problem is, you know, history of hostage situations, all that stuff. Now, with this case here, with the 7 inmates, you know what, there could be technically a test. You're a cadet. You know what I mean? They could be testing your, you know, the fact that, you know, are you going to stand up? Are you going to fold? You know, I agree with Russ. You shouldn't be put in a situation when you have 7 inmates coming at you. If you have a chance to aggress. But definitely at this point, you should also take note of who those 7 inmates are, because I would take note of who those inmates are. And what I would do, honestly, is reestablish some sense of control by either dealing with them individually, if I can get that off, or having my people come in and just try to address them, let them know that you're in control, that you're not afraid. Because I think right now what this is this could be a test. I got tested once where I was walking in a dorm, and an inmate I had dealt with in a controlled setting, never had an issue with, was one of the better inmates I dealt with. For some reason in the dorm, this inmate kind of had a change of behavior and got in my face, and I got nervous. I was kind of backed into a corner. I put my hands out. Here's the funny thing, guys. The difference between us and streets can go right to a weapon. I didn't have that option. All I had was my hand on my radio, and it forced me to communicate. Now, the funny thing is the inmate was testing me, and basically he goes, "Gant, were you really going to hit me? I thought we were cool behind the wall." I said, "No, we don't know each other like that. Our interactions are forced interactions every day. You're respectful. I don't know who you are." But the inmate was actually testing me. But the fact that I went, believe it or not, I didn't back away. I went right into a controlled posture, whether he could have took me out or not. The point is I didn't react in a fearful manner. So as long as, if these 7 inmates are coming, don't get me wrong, look for a spot to aggress, but make sure that you look like you're in control at all times. Don't look like that you're afraid. Don't look like, you know, you're going to back down, but be smart about it, because most of the time this just could be a test to see where your courage is. And I will tell you something right now, guys. If those inmates succeed and they see fear in you, that's going to be very hard for you to overcome in the rest of your career. They will use that fear and they will manipulate. They'll be aggressive, and I've seen it. So you have to make sure at all times that you, even though you're dealing with 7, that you have a sense of control about you, and that you don't show them fear. Even though you may be feeling it, don't hesitate. Don't show them it. What do you think about that, Russ?
Yeah, definitely. Let me just add one quick little thing. You're talking about being tested. Let's be clear here that I'm not so sure that the testing here going on is coming from the inmate side. This might be coming from whatever some set of officers might think is a good idea or not, and it definitely isn't.
Well, the sad thing is, guys, I will tell you one thing. I don't believe in the sink or swim method in corrections. I believe that senior staff should always have your back. I believe that if they're setting you up to see how you react, what about if that turns out backwards? We have to always show that we're partnership. So when you're walking in, you're a cadet. What would help the cadet is that if the inmates could see how connected you are to senior staff, you know, and how connected they are to you. Because even if I'm an inmate and I know, let's say that rookie's new and I want to come after that rookie, I can't, because I know he's backed by senior staff. I know that senior staff's got his back, so it makes me a little hesitant. Now, if I feel that that cadet's all alone, well, guess what? The senior staff isolated that cadet. So now it opens up a game for the inmate to employ whatever he wants to do, an aggressive technique, a subtle manipulation, whatever it is. So the thing is that right from the get-go, those new boots, they have to be welcomed into the family, and the inmates need to see that. So if you're a senior officer and you believe in that sink or swim, I got no respect for you. When a rookie comes in, you embrace that rookie, you take that rookie in, and you let the inmates see how connected you are to that rookie, so that rookie does not feel alone, and the inmates know that that rookie's not alone.
Excellent. Absolutely.
I got a question. So we're just going down the list here. I want to hit up, I think it's Brian G's question. So we'll go to you first, Russ. What are some of your biggest challenges the job has given you?
Wow, you know, it would take me probably a minute to think that one out. I think that you know, even though we look at things often as challenges, that challenges and obstacles are actually opportunity. The thing for me was when I started off, you know, I was very much just a country boy. All I wanted to do was hunt and fish, but I needed a job, and then I needed a career. And what it allowed me to do is it allowed me to really hone my communication skills, which has helped me in lots of things, even outside corrections. It taught me, you know, how to control people, how to get favorable outcomes, taught me how to de-escalate situations. It taught me how to deal with violent encounters. You know, there's just such a range of things that that I can thank corrections for in my personal life that that it brought to me by forcing me to face my fears, face my challenges, and be able to mold myself into the person I am now. I would have never become who I am now without corrections. You know?
You know, first off, I agree. There's parts of corrections that actually help me become a better person. I know the job could be very stressful, very demanding, but if you know how to balance that, it could be very rewarding. Now, for me, challenges actually are obstacles that we have to overcome, which, you know, if you do well, they could make you better. Working at a female facility, now mind you, I started my career at a female facility, and actually it's funny because I think someone asked a question, and it's going to kind of go into the same. This one officer goes, this is Cole Skelton. I start orientation on Monday to be a corrections officer at a women's prison in Dayton, Ohio. What advice would you give a male CO at a female facility? So it's going to kind of blend in here with the challenges. At the female facility, I learned how to communicate, which has been one of the best skills you ever could learn in corrections. Communication will solve 99% of your issues. Good communication skills will carry you a long way in this career. Most people believe that, you know, all we do is go in roughhouse. That's not the case, guys. That's not what corrections is about. Most of the time it is about communication and how effective you are, but also how trusted you are. Your communication don't mean nothing if you're not seen as consistent, firm, and fair. Now remember, we don't trust inmates, but inmates do have to trust us, you know, because we have a job. That job is to protect those inmates. So communication has always been key. And for me, when I worked at the female facility, that communication I learned right off the bat, but it was very challenging because I found that females actually questioned my ability to be an officer. Like basically, if I give an order, they would question it. They were very challenging. And as a male CO, they would play cards to make you hesitant in doing your job. So, you know, if you were doing a search and, you know, let's say, for some reason at the time, it's different now because of PREA, but when I first started, you know, we would do pat frisk and stuff, and they would just make false allegations. Oh, we lost Russ. They would make false allegations, and they were doing the false allegations just to kind of make you hesitant. So when you go into a female facility, you have to be confident in your skill, and you cannot allow the inmates to make you hesitant in doing your job. You're going to get those false allegations. They're going to be investigated. But obviously, if you're not doing nothing, once the investigation is cleared, don't let that stop you from ever being effective, because that's their game, guys. Their game literally is that they're going to try to make these allegations. So, if I make these allegations, this person will think twice about it. That's their way of getting a sense of control. So for me, having to deal with the false allegations and then, still keeping me motivated to do the job, especially as a male CO in a female facility, was tough. But then I realized that's the way that they're getting control. They're using the false allegations to manipulate my sense of control, make me hesitant, and I didn't allow that. And trust and believe, guys, they'll let it be known. What they'll do is, after an allegation, let's say you have to get moved for whatever reason, whatever it is, that to them is a sense of control. And they're like, hey, Ganji, if you do that again, guess what I'll just say? You could say what you want because I'm not doing it. So at the end of the day, whatever I want you to do, you're going to do it. Don't let them get that sense of control. They try to manipulate the system. See, I always tell people that you could teach classes on how to avoid manipulation, but sometimes the systems and policies are in play that inmates can manipulate. So if they can manipulate the policy or the system, they can also manipulate the people that work in the system. So there should be some safeguards for us, and you have to be aware of that. When the person, they may not be able to get to you, but they can still circumvent you and get things in the system that can make you maneuver a little bit awkwardly. So what you have to do is you have to be aware of those things and don't let that make you hesitant. Inmates are going to play games. If they can't get to you, they'll get to the system, or they'll get to someone above you. Whatever it is, if you're doing your job and you're doing your job correctly, and this happened to me with a female facility with the allegations, well, keep on doing what you're doing. Because again, if you're good at what you do, inmates are going to make false allegations because you're a threat to them. They're going to want you removed. So that's how we lose good cops. We lose good cops, we lose good officers, because inmates play these games, and the next thing you know, the officer gets disenfranchised. Don't let that happen. They're going to do the allegations. It's going to run its course. But at the end of the day, you're still going to be standing, and you're still going to be 100% effective. So that was one of my biggest challenges, and I think that ran pretty well with working inside a female facility. If that makes any sense. I hope we get Russ back. Russ has the number to get back into this room. So I know he froze a little bit, but hopefully he'll be able to come back. Actually, I'll send him a text now just to tell him same number to get back in. The next question is, someone said, would I ever work for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice? In a heartbeat. I'm going to tell you why. I know a lot of officers that work for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. They actually follow Tier Talk. Their knowledge is phenomenal. They know their job. I'll tell you that right now. I mean, I've had a few come through the show, a few that comment. Russ is coming back. I've had a few that comment. The knowledge of a Texas CO, I have a lot of respect for. I mean, I think that if you have a chance to, I know Texas, they have some major air condition concerns right now, but if you ever get a chance to walk in a Texas prison, you're going to see some of the tightest, most controlled staff. I mean, they run their facilities. They got my hats off. They got my respect. So if you're actually got a chance to, I believe this person, Viper, maybe working at a Texas as a Texas CO, you're at a great foundation to become great. The respect I have for those criminal justice professionals out in Texas is unmatched. They follow the show. They're very supportive. And guys, they offer a lot to this channel. I'm glad to have them part of the community. And you should be very proud to wear a badge with the state of Texas on it as a criminal justice professional out in Texas, in my opinion. Hey, Russ, I have a question I want to run your. Oh, well, Russ, let me ask you a question, Russ. This came from Viper. Would you want to be a Texas CO?
Oh, hell yeah, man. I'd love to give that a spin, man. I'm always up for a challenge. I feel like I'm not done yet. You know, that's why I do the stuff that I do with you, Anthony. That's why I do the stuff on Keepers of Chaos. I've got something to contribute to this profession yet. You know, just because I'm retired doesn't mean I'm inactive. You know, and I never joined corrections thinking that someday I was just gonna quit, because I never quit. I've never quit on anything in my life, and so I'm down for this. I want to help everyone that I can. It's my mission in life to help, you know, younger officers, older officers, officers that are on the verge of retirement, people that want to promote, people that want to learn the craft from me. You know, that's what I'm about, and that's why I do what I do day in and day out.
Well, you know what's fun? I got a great question for you from Blues Little. This is a total Russ Hamilton question, if I ever heard of one. Your thoughts on the tools COs use to defend themselves, like let's say, for example, OC spray, batons, etc. Do you think it's better to have these tools to defend yourselves, or is it more dangerous as a weapon against you? Want me to go first with that, Russ, or you want it?
I want to tackle this. I want to tackle this. This is right in my wheelhouse. Let me tell you something. One of the reasons that corrections always gets this is the short shrift with regards to when other law enforcement agencies look at us, or when administrators look at us, is because they have never given us the tools that we need and the backing we need, and yet we come out time after time on top of situations and make an impact. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that California Department of Corrections is, you know, the best thing since sliced bread ever. But what I will tell you is this, is that we have the best disturbance control plans in the United States because of the equipment that we carry on a day in, day out basis. So my regular normal loadout for any particular day was this, is I had a vest on. Every corrections officer in the United States should have a vest. I had a baton. I had an MK9 pepper spray, sometimes two of them. I always had at least one set of cuffs, sometimes some zip ties to go with that too. Then on top of that, I would have at least 2 chemical grenades, along with the rest of my accoutrements, which, you know, were just, you know, your flashlight, radios, and keys. In California Department of Corrections, every single officer is a force multiplier. When you get 5 officers together, you've got 10 grenades at your disposal. You've got at least 5 MK9s, maybe more, because sometimes we'd carry an extra one with us, or sometimes the guy would have a load-bearing vest that would have all kinds of extra equipment in it. We always had almost immediate access, depending on where you are, to even more stuff. We bring out the 40 millimeters, the multi-launchers, the Mark 48s, which, you know, you've got 48 ounces of OC pepper spray there, and a whole host of other, you know, munitions. We don't mess around. We don't have to wait for our CRT team to get there to start doing something. So everyone being a force multiplier, we don't lose our yards. We don't lose our institutions. We take it back. Everybody should have this kind of equipment. And, you know, people out there say, oh, we don't want you to have this. We don't want you to have that. Well, you know what? Give us that stuff. We'll take it. We'll make things work, and we'll come out on top. You know, the one thing that they always don't want to give you is enough manpower too. So we need more manpower, but we need all that equipment to make it work. Everyone's a force multiplier. Everyone brings something to the fight. So,
I want to add something too as well. By the way, we have 21 people in here, which is awesome. I'm honored. I want to add something too. For people that are lucky to work at these facilities that give the officers the proper protection and proper weapons, don't misuse it, because at any point those weapons could be taken away. I know it's sad, but the department kind of does that universal punishment where if you have one officer that, let's say, misuses the OC, there are some departments that will wind up, instead of going after the individual, they'll go after everyone and just pull the OC. I mean, you can see it right now in facilities like Rikers where they don't want to use the OC against the juveniles, and it only takes one person to misuse it before they decide to say, you know what, we're going to take it away from everyone. So there's a lot of facilities that love to have protective stuff, protective equipment, protective use of force, like items like mechanical stuff. And then there's some facilities that have it and they wind up misusing it. And then, you know, it makes us look bad, because then those will be the examples they'll use when we're fighting for something, you know. So, oh, my officers need to have OC, but hey, remember in New York they did this, and now they're afraid to pass it. So we all connected, guys. So if there's something that's foolish that's happening, out in another state, don't think it doesn't affect other states who are going to need these things. So your one bad action could have such a crazy ripple effect. So remember that when you're trusted with these tools, do not misuse them, because at any time they would love to take it away from us. Trust and believe that. So when you have departments that are getting you those tools, I am sure they're going through obstacle upon obstacle to get it. And then it only takes one misuse. And then all of a sudden, everybody from the left is going to come over and try to take those tools away. Which is unfair, because you're not holding the person responsible specifically who was an asshole with the privilege of being able to carry these things at this point. But I also want to mention one other thing, and I think Russ might want to compliment what I just said about the universal taken away, because I see you moving back. Got one more thing though too. Always have, if you're carrying a baton, then someone else should be next to you carrying a baton. You're always supposed to have a weapon to back up the other weapon, like you're never alone with one. Because you're right, if you're carrying a bunch of tools, those tools could be taken away from you at any moment, but it becomes hesitant if there's someone else behind you with those same set of tools. So you always want to have someone. I know we're understaffed, but ideally is when you're going on that floor, you want to have someone with the same tools, just in case your stuff gets taken away. Someone can come right behind and protect you, as well as protecting that weapon that officer could get taken away from. But again, we need these tools. So when you have them, use them wisely. Don't just go crazy. Because remember, guys, and I mentioned this before, in corrections, communication's key. That's how we survive in this profession. That's what makes it different than police, because we don't automatically have a chance to go for that weapon, which actually makes us better in enforcing what needs to be enforced. But if you're carrying weapons and that becomes your sole source, eventually you're going to use those weapons to communicate. And that's when you're going to start getting in trouble, because it's not going to be necessary. And that's when they start taking shit away. Yeah, Russ, we have
Yeah, you know, corrections has suffered that in all departments down through the years. You know, one bad actor causes everyone to waver under some new policy or something being taken away, or any number of things. You know, go out there, honor your oath, and stay professional. And use your tools wisely and correctly, and make good, sound, tactical decisions.
All right, Russ, I got a question that looked like it's specifically, this may be for you to answer. It comes from Zari Kasabayan, excuse me if I hope I got it right, but it says, Russ, I'm in the hiring process with the CDCR, just passed the CDSA exam. What do you recommend me to say and do during the psychological interview? I can actually help out with that. You want to go first with that, or you want?
I'll do this, because I just helped a number of people through this. You know, chances are what they're going to give you is going to be what's called the MMPI, which is the Minnesota Multifaceted Personality Inventory, right? And it's a bunch of questions calculated to test a certain number of things. They ask you the same thing kind of over and over again with slight variations to try and detect things like your honesty and how well you handle things like stress. It's not a big deal. When you come down to the part though where they're going to ask you about your life, because there will be a part where a psychologist usually interviews you. And I just did this for a hiring process back about 3.5 years ago when I got on with the juvenile department. They will do things specifically designed to push your buttons. Don't buy into the pushing your buttons part. Go ahead and answer the questions that they ask, because they'll be answering you questions, but in kind of a little bit of a hostile way, and just open up and be frank with them, you know. And that's all you can really do. There's no secret way to try and hack the process or anything like that. You just have to stick it out. You have to be honest, and you just have to try and do your best, because they want to look at how you handle that pressure.
I want to compliment what Russ said too, because Russ mentioned honesty. Honesty brings consistency with your answers. That's the key. They look for consistency. They may ask you multiple questions in multiple different ways, but technically it's the same question. If you're honest, you're consistent, and your answers should not vary. They're looking for variation. So, you know, they're looking for that consistency that only truth can bring. They're going to test you, be honest. They're checking, like Russ said, to see how you adapt and adjust. They're looking to make sure that, you know, even just, you know, they may run a scenario by you, how you handle it. Remember, at all times, you have to have control of yourself before you control any situation. So if they see during those interviews that you're getting flustered, you're getting nervous, you're, you know, being anxious, whatever it is, if they feel at any point that you can't even control that interview, you know, you're going to be put in a lot more stressful environment than that psych interview. So how you come across, and if you're telling the truth, there's no reason why you can't show confidence in your answers. So make sure that when you say an answer, you're confident, you don't hesitate. And if you don't understand the question, if it's an interview, or sometimes it's really written where it's like you kind of circle, you know, whatever, you scribble in answers. But if it's an actual interview, be confident, take your time to process the question, really think it out. If you don't understand it, ask them. Say, I'm sorry, I'm not understanding that question. Can you ask it again? You know, you have to give them the best answer you can, which means that you have to understand what's being asked of you. But the key is, and again, just to complement what Russ says, consistency is honesty. You keep that consistency, you bring confidence to the table. And I'm telling you something, guys, that's what we look for. Like for me, I'm thinking about, and you know, as we move forward, is this the kind of person I want to put in a prison? Yes. Consistency, fairness, and confidence, why not? But if you're coming off that interview because you're telling stories and you're lying and you're not consistent, you're going to start losing your confidence. And that's not the kind of person I'm going to want walking next to me. So again, how do you think we would want you to walk on a tier and then try to carry that same consistency with you, with your answers, and those consistencies will bring you confidence. I like this next question comes from 66 Guns. I use my approach to manage inmates. My word is gold with inmates. They respect that. When I say I'll do something, I'll do it. If I can't or won't, they accept that because I always do what I say. First off, that's great advice, 66 Guns. That's why I wanted to read it out. That kind of deals with the old model of corrections, being firm, fair, or consistent. The thing that I like, and we kind of battle off with what we said before, but 66 Guns kind of slammed it home a little bit, was the fact that inmates need to trust you. They need to there's got to be some consistency in who you are. I'm not saying consistency so much in the routines. Like obviously you have to be sporadic, keep them on their toes, but with what they should expect from you. And I think that you should be good with your word, because inmates, again, have to trust you. Again, I'm not saying you have to trust them. That's a different ball game, but they have to trust you. And I think your comment, again, it's definitely worth reading again, if I may. I use my approach to manage inmates. My word is gold with inmates. That's key, because that will bring you about a respect. And at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you something right now. If you carry yourself off consistent and truthful with the inmate population, when other inmates go to pop shit, some of the inmates may come back up and say, not with him. If that guy says something, he's going to do it. So stop. They'll start monitoring the population for you. Trust and believe that, especially if they have respect for you. And that's one of the best ways to get respect. So I think that's a great comment by 66 Guns. And definitely, if you're watching this, you should hold on to that comment, because that's how you get respect, in my opinion. All right, Russ, so we're going to cross over to a next question. Oh, by the way, Alexander liked our answer before with the 7 inmates. He said that was great. Thank you. I believe it was tests from staff. The sergeant of the CERT team offered me a spot on his team, and well earned, by the way, Alexander, well earned. But I will say for staff, you know, show support. I don't buy that sink or swim. Show support right from the get-go. Let the inmates see that rookie supported. There's other ways you can test them, but you should not test them where there's a risk like that. To me, that was a risk, and I just don't. Because I'm going to tell you something right now. What about if you didn't pass? What would have been the outcome? Thank God it was you, but it could have been someone that may not have passed that, and that's just not a risk worth taking.
Yeah, or let's be frank, an inmate like that. It doesn't matter how good you are, you can end up in a bad situation. So they're putting them in an unknown. You know, you're not controlled. You're not in control of that test.
Yep, and as I said, to me, that's one of the big things here is the fact that senior staff should be supportive right from the get-go. They should not make you feel alone. And at this point, if they're putting you sink or swim in corrections, you can't afford to sink at any level, I got Amber Sharpton's question, which I think is a great question. He goes, what about respect and disrespecting my fellow officers? My fellow officers has been there 6 years longer than me and just tends to take the awful verbal disrespect and never addresses it while the same. Okay, so I'm assuming I did a video a while back, and let me just make sure we're talking about the right thing here. What about respect and disrespect? My fellow officer has been there 6 years longer than me and just tends to take the awful verbal disrespect. Okay, so I don't know if this is about respect with each other. I know when I got into the field, there's always that divide between senior staff and rookies. And I think the reason why is sometimes, first off, we don't realize how important we are to each other. Senior staff, sometimes, you may get complacent in your way. So a good rookie who wants to learn can really put you on your toes, kind of get you awoke. Because happens to all of us. All the best of us can become complacent. So sometimes these good senior staff, these rookie staffs are energetic and they bring a sense of life back. And then vice versa, senior staff has experience. So there's a very good partnership at the very beginning that people don't understand, the balance between that revitalized energy and the experience that could be shared. So again, it's just a very good balance that people just don't seem to really want to hold on to. Now, I had senior staff that right off the bat just didn't like me because I was a cadet. There was no other, or just a new boot. There was just no other reason why you wouldn't like me. I don't know you on that level. So the only reason why I know we're not getting along and you're being this way right at the beginning, right when I first meet you, it has to be because I'm new, because there's nothing else here. We're not personal with each other. At that point, believe it or not, I became very dependent on my training officer, who had a lot more time, obviously, who set the environment for us to learn, which means that if he felt that we weren't welcomed by senior staff, he made it happen. Because I think that's part of it. I think as a field training CO, I think part of it is, yes, giving the person the knowledge, but also giving them the environment where they can shine, where they can, apply that knowledge, to basically give them an environment where they can learn in a manner that's, you don't have these people here that are treating them wrong because they're rookies. So I went to my senior FTO who handled that. So the whole time I only dealt with maybe one really negative senior staff member once. Once I mentioned it to my FTO, I got you, brother. I got you. And whatever it was, they were a first name, they know each other for many years. He handled it. And I had that family environment right from the get-go. Now, I know a lot of people don't have that. I know a lot of people come into the field and they're isolated. And I want to tell you something right now. If you're a senior staff member and you're doing that, you're making that cadet vulnerable to the inmate population. When that cadet comes in, you got to realize something. That's going to be the person that's going to save your life, just like you should be expected to save theirs. That person's coming in into this profession. That person's supposed to have your back. Unless there's a reason to distrust them, we're actually put in a profession really that we're forced to blindly trust the person next to us. That's why I trust, sad to say, but the higher ups that put people in these positions, we're forced to trust you blindly. I don't really know who you're putting next to me, but because you're putting that person next to me, I am forced to trust that person blindly because that person has to have my back. If that person doesn't have my back, who you're putting next to me. But in this case here, we're supposed to foster an environment that's welcoming, and the inmates have to see that. So when you have a new boot coming in, it would be great for the inmates to see how all the senior staff welcomes that person in. And if an inmate goes to step up, that, you have senior staff coming in and just kind of, showing that rookie, like letting the rookie govern themselves, don't get me wrong, but reminding that rookie you're not alone and letting the inmates see that. So if you're responsible for isolating and pushing these rookies away, I got no respect for you, because when you push that rookie away, where are you pushing them to? You're pushing them to the inmate population. Russ, what do you think? I hope I'm answering Amber's question, but what do you think about senior staff that treat rookies like shit?
Yeah, that's the stupid part of old school, if you will. That's not where we need to be. We need to do everything we can to make every single cadet as successful as possible. Now, if some fall by the wayside, it shouldn't be our fault, but that shouldn't be our decision to decide that, hey, you know what, I'm going to set this person up to fail. That's ridiculous, And I was right there, I've told, if you guys go back and find some of my videos there on Chair Talk, where I talk about what happened to me the first day, San Quentin, death row, and I got there 40 minutes early because I was going to get the lowdown, and this guy just dumped all the equipment and left. didn't say a word to me. That's on death row. Come on, man.
It's disrespectful. You know what? I may have misread her question wrong, but it was still good information to get out there. She was talking about senior staffs, how sometimes they let the inmates disrespect the senior staff. In her case, she doesn't allow it. So I had a guy send me a message a while back because the inmates kept on calling him fat, and he was ignoring it. It was one inmate first, and then because he ignored it, other inmates got in, and he kind of let it get out of his control. So when he sent me a message, he was very upset about it. And I told him, I said, well, listen, first off, you need to address the one inmate that said it. Even if you couldn't identify it, then listen, if you walk down a tier and you hear someone yell, yeah, something disrespectful, I know it's sad to say, sometimes you have to do it, then just pick an inmate. Let them say, I don't know if you said it or not, but you know what? Step out. I'm not going to tolerate this, whatever you got to do, but you can't allow an inmate to show any signs of disrespect, and you mostly cannot ignore it. It has to be addressed. Has to be addressed at every level, because ignoring is a submissive gesture, which means that you're actually taking that in. It's the same thing if an inmate gives you a compliment and you ignore it. You have to address it. That disrespect is also a test. So what happened with this officer is he let the one inmate say, and then all the other inmates just hopping on. So now when this officer is walking down a tier, he's got no respect. This officer is not going to be effective in any order given. He's not, because of that one inmate that did that test that he didn't act out on. Like, you don't have to be unprofessional. Who said it? What did you say? And just literally go ahead and address that inmate. Again, I'll tell you something right now. I either write the inmate or just let him know it's something that you don't tolerate. But if you don't act on that immediately, he wind up losing control of that unit. And the message was very, he messed up. So what's the sad thing is I don't know what the end result is, but for him to get that respect back, it's going to be a lot of hard work. It's going to be a lot of hard work because he didn't address it when it happened. So if there's a level of disrespect that an inmate gives you right from the get-go and you don't handle it at that moment, it's going to be a ripple effect that's going to get out of your control. And then what's going to happen is you're going to lose all respect, and the inmates themselves, they're not going to listen to you even when you're giving out orders, because they're going to take you as a joke. They're going to take you literally as a joke. Now, I will tell you one thing. I have a thick skin, so I'm not going to let inmates disrespect make me explode. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying be professional when addressing and let the inmate know that you're zero tolerant with it. You're not going to get that off. And again, this is your one warning, or if you don't want the warning, then just go right at them. You know what? Disrespectful, there's an abusive language or there's something, make their life a little bit inconvenient. It may not be a lock charge, but it may be something where you could mess with their life a little bit, make it a little bit inconvenient, but let them know you don't tolerate that sign of disrespect. And for the senior officers that are allowing the inmates to disrespect them, shame on you. Because what's happening is you're setting a culture there that is very unacceptable. And I'm going to tell you something right now. You think it's all fun and games. All the inmates are laughing at you. I'll guarantee you that. All the inmates are laughing at you. And I bet you right now, Amber, because if I'm answering the question right, you're the one that's controlling that unit right now. It's you. Because you set the tone that knows. And you know what? When you set that tone, you're seen as a professional. And right off the bat, you're setting that tone. You're running that unit. That officer, it's a joke to him. It's a joke to him. Very, this is not a game here with inmates. This is not a game. You're professional. You keep things moving. The day is over. The day is over. It's just you're there long enough to do your 8 hours, whatever little communication to get the job done, keeping it professional, and you move forward. This interaction, this disrespect, it's, to me, I don't know why it's irking me so much, but it irks me because we're trying to be professional in this profession. And then you get these little inmates that crack these little jokes. And then this officer thinks they're being effective and they're not. They have no control. Russ, I mean, I know in your career, you've dealt with inmates that try to get disrespectful. It's a test. They want to see how you react.
And here's the thing with Amber there is this guy is making what she's doing that much harder to do. She's apparently exerting some control and some modulation over that, and it's working, but it's not working like it should be working. Because when we talk about consistency in corrections, it's not just individual consistency, it's unit consistency, shift consistency, and everything beyond the borders of that. You can't have one shift doing one thing and the next shift doing another, just like you can't have one officer doing one thing and another. All those things need to add up and compound and add to the security, not detract from it.
Right. And I will tell you one thing, Amber, because obviously we've talked before. I know you're highly professional, so I actually like the fact that you stepped up, because I'm wondering what that makes that other officer feel when you're stepping up protecting him, making sure that he's not being disrespected. I'm just very curious to see how he would react to that. I would love to see that moment. I would not tolerate that in any level. So going to the next question. And by the way, guys, these are really good questions. Again, we roughed it out, but this will become a lot smoother eventually. But I think so. Okay, so J Life 23 says, I have a question. I have 28 days to prep for my CDCR PAT, the physical test, and I'm overweight. What do you think would be the best thing for me to pass? I'll do this first, Russ, and then can you do it? I just have something right now. Let me tell you something. Academies look for improvement. So this will be my real quick answer, and I'll give it to Russ because he went through their academy. Be better every day. Strive to be better. If you're running and you say and you're better a second each day, then you're improving. The academy really does look for improvement. I know that. They look to see that you're not getting worse. They look to see that you're trying. They're looking to see that you're pushing yourself to the limits. So look to be better every day. All because you're overweight, believe it or not, doesn't mean that you're out of shape. I've had people, that could outrun me in a heartbeat. Just some people, they just maybe bigger bone, whatever it is. Look to be better every day. Strive to just get an inch closer to where you need to be every day. And I promise you, they'll see that improvement. But Russ, you know a little bit more about what that academy is like. What would you recommend?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's talking about what's happening at the academy right now, or if this is an entry test for getting on the hiring list. Getting a little bit better each day, yeah, that's key. If you're talking about just getting up to that physical abilities test, that's going to get you, on into the academy and so forth. I would, if there was only one thing that I could work at, it would be cardio, because, and I know things have probably changed since I did it, because it's been a long time now. But one of the things that they do is they hook you up. They're probably going to hook you up to an EKG. You're probably going to have to pedal that stationary bike for a set amount of time, and then they're going to look to see how fast your heart recovers. So so the one thing that you really have in your control to do is probably going to be that cardio. So if I was just looking at one angle of it, there's other things that they may have phased in or phased out, but there's also, I know there was a grip strength test. I don't know, the last time I did a PAT for any department was about 3 years ago when I went juvenile, and we had a 150-pound dummy drag. So it's good to have some upper body strength, but cardio will get you there when other things won't.
Right. And I will tell you again, just to reiterate, just look to be better than you are yesterday. That's the key. And again, for me, it was about, I wasn't out there to break records. I was just making myself better. I wasn't comparing myself to everybody else. I was comparing myself from the day before. So I got some other questions coming away. We may have a guest speaker come in real quick. I gave him the number to come in. Yeah, we may. We'll see. You'll know him. All right, let me move to the next question. Okay, so the next question is, let's see, hold on. Should all COs be certified peace officers with full arrest powers? I'll address that first, because in my state, we are police officers. That's our title. We're senior correctional police officers. So the reason why I say yes, and I'm going to keep my part quick, because this is something that we can have, we could discuss this all day. One of the first articles I ever wrote for Corrections One that actually went viral was, yes, correctional officers and law enforcement. The reason why I got that was I literally was comparing the work that you do behind the wall to the work that's being done on the streets. And we truly are the definition of community policing. We have resources. We go above and beyond. So I believe that the work that we do is similar to obviously what police would do on the streets. And I think there's many different roles when it comes to law enforcement. And to say that, you know, when I would say, hey, we are law enforcement, someone goes, well, you're not police. I said, well, police aren't the only entities that, you know, have a function within that law enforcement realm. Everybody has a function, and we do enforce the laws behind the wall, everything from murders, rapes. I mean, we're there to protect and serve our public. It's a forgotten public. It's a public most people don't care about, but, you know, to minimize what we do because of the people that we supervise is so unfair. Actually, we're put in the more dangerous communities. Most police may deal with someone for 10, 15 minutes. We deal with them throughout the day, you know, and a lot of the work that's done behind the wall affects the streets. And there's a partnership there. So, I mean, if you're not saying that we have some level of law enforcement and you're kind of like pushing us out of that community, then you're getting rid of a good resource that can help your community, because we get information. Just like information comes in, information goes out. And to not see us as equals, you know, I remember, and I'll pass it off to Russ, I did a video on this too. Basically, I don't like the word just. So when someone comes in and says, oh, you're just correctional officers, I don't like that word. What is that supposed to mean? What does just mean? Have you ever walked the walk? Have you ever did a tier? There's nothing in this profession that is defined by just. So there was this awesome lieutenant, a good friend of mine. He's retired. He actually lives in the great state of Texas. And he had a beefsteak dinner, and he told me he really wanted to get his police to connect with us. He really believed what we did. And this was great to see someone from the outside have so much faith in this profession. And I think he had faith in this profession because of me. And what I mean by that is, you respect the people, then you may respect what they do. So guys, if you hold yourself accordingly and you keep your head up high and you have a great deal of respect for what you do and who you are, people will see that and they'll respect the profession because of you, because how you carry yourself. So make this long story short, and I got to get Russ's opinion on this, was when we were at this dinner, there was a chance for us to interact with police officers, you know, and kind of give them, you know, what we do, you know, and it's not, you don't get this every day, you know, these people really wanted to know. So I bring them to the table, and there was one officer that he just didn't want to be in corrections, you know, but I was friends with him, so I wanted him to come to the dinner. And when they, you know, when we're going around the tables, the one officer had asked us, you know, what do we do? So we're all going around, you know, what we do is what we do. We're correctional officers, blah, blah, blah. At the time, I was a sergeant at a male facility. He is the only person that said, I'm a correctional officer, but one day I'm going to be, and then he went into like the sheriffs or the police. When the officer left, I said, let me ask you a question, you know, because you know me, I'm always analyzing stuff. My background's actually in human behavior. I said, what was the reason for that second part of the answer? Did you not feel that your first answer was good enough? Like, why couldn't you just end with, I'm a correctional officer? He didn't ask you what you wanted to be. He asked you what you are. And he goes, well, that's what I want to be. I said, but why aren't you proud of what you are in the moment right now? Like, he didn't ask you what you're going to be tomorrow. He asked you what you are now. So when you're at this table and you're sitting with us and we're all saying that we're proud that we're correctional officers, I know you may have this dream, but that dream's for tomorrow. Right now, he asked you what you are and what you are as a correctional officer. Man, stand tall. Be proud. It's a fucking great profession, but you have to carry that. You have to believe that. If you don't believe that, no one's going to believe that. And that's why I believe my battle the whole time was I was wrong. My battle to recognize the profession was, I always thought it had to come from the outside in. It's not. We're flawed. It has to come from the inside out. We have to believe in what we do, and we have to believe what each other does. You know, the departments, we just have to believe in the collective mission. But Russ, in your opinion, I mean, how could you not think corrections is law enforcement?
Yeah, you know, this is something that I often talk about. I often write about it in the battles that we're fighting in corrections to get the things that we need. And so I've broken that down to, and some of you are going to recognize this because I've done this before, but that anagram is STEP, S-T-E-P. And that first one in that, S, is for status, right? We need that status as peace officers. Why? Because that begets us what we need to deal with the situations that we face, which are also the other things that we need. Better status gets us better training, S-T. Better training gets us better equipment, S-T-E. And all of that ends up to what? More pay. And, you know, that's where we need to be in this correctional realm that we're in, is getting those, you know, status, training, equipment, and pay. this is not some, you know, I don't know the way to put this exactly. This is just, you know, common sense. If you're an administrator, if you're in management, if you're in government that looks at these departments, if you start paying people more and requiring more out of them and giving them better training, better equipment, and full peace officer status, what you get in return is so much more. Your department and state will be shielded better from liability because people want to hold on to those jobs. Those people that stay in there, those training dollars stay within that pool of talent, and you don't have to keep recruiting people over and over again. You get a base of people that are more stable, more happy. They're going to show up more often for work. They're going to be sick less of the time. You know, and this is easy stuff to understand. I mean, it's not a big mystery. And so that S part, that status part, it's huge. We need that. We need that in order to protect ourselves and to get all those other things that extend out from there. So anyway, let me get down off my soapbox now.
No, but can I tell you something? You're right on. Now, guys, I want to just give another reminder, guys. At any time, if you ever want to participate, if not today, because we will get better in this, all I got to do is give you a number. You got to turn on the Zoom app, and you're more than welcome to participate in the communication. But if you plan on doing that, make sure your department knows, because sometimes, depending if it's good dialogue, I may want to release it out to a bigger audience through Corrections One. And obviously, you could see why, because a lot of information here is not being brought to them. So if there's something good from here, like this, I'm going to hang up. It's a rough start, you know, but it's my first live one. I mean, so, you know, it's pretty cool. So, you know, but nothing's perfect. You're going to see us messing up, but eventually we will get better. But this is your chance too. All I have to do is give you a number. You take that number, it's free. You all got to just turn on your computer, go to Zoom, or you can do it right from your cell phone. And now you're in the box with us answering questions, you know. And the funny thing is that there's no perfect answer here. So even as we're giving out answers, you know, we can complement each answers. And if we're wrong, let's be constructive about it. I don't have to knock down your answer because it's your perspective. I respect your perspective, but let me give you my perspective. Maybe I'm missing something, maybe you're missing something, but the effort is always to kind of see where we're at. Now, Chaos asked a good question. I kind of want to respond to, because I'm on the higher level and kind of looking down. So Chaos said, after 20 plus years, well, thank you for your service, Chaos. I only have about 17, 18, so 20 plus years. Thank you. I'm finding my last 8 to be, she probably has 22. I guess he's got to do 30. I have my last 8 to be the most daunting. I don't like the direction my department is going. They're swinging so far towards the inmates and coming down harder on staff. Okay, so I want to address this actually in Chaos. This is a very common concern. A lot of staff right now feel that they're being forgotten, especially in regards to where corrections is going. There's an evolution. Let's just be honest. There's movements to push rehabilitation. And unfortunately, people aren't seeing the balance that you can't have rehabilitation without safety and security. That's where we have to come in and remind people that we need to exist. There is no rehabilitation. And even if that means having inmates on this show to mention how important it is to have that safe environment, just like you don't want bullying in school, you ain't going to have rehabilitation happening in prisons without custody facilitating that. You know, a lot of people still have the impression that we don't move, we don't do anything, that, you know, the inmates kind of stay idle. That's not the case. We're facilitating these movements. So here's the thing. These changes are going to happen. They're going to happen. So we have to work with those changes. We do, guys. As much as it's, you know, we have to be part of that change. We can't resist it anymore. We're losing. Believe it or not, guys, I do a lot of TV stuff. I don't play politics. All I care about is this profession. I care about the people that work this profession. One side wants to privatize. They don't care about us. The other side is very pro-inmate, right? But the pro-inmate side's winning. So the sad thing is that we can sit there and be resistant to that, or we can try to go with that movement and give our perspective, and hopefully people start to listen and we build a bridge where people start to see that we actually have the same goals in mind. You know, when I was out in Oklahoma, there was a thing called One Voice. And One Voice did this survey. I think it's like the Michigan Correctional Organization. Andy Potter's his name. And he realized that the officers or correctional staff in general have the same concerns as the inmates. And the basic concerns are they want a safe and secured facility. Well, so do we. We want to go home. So do they. You know, they asked, well, one of the questions was, should you secure or should you shackle pregnant inmates? Universal no. both from staff and inmates. So we share a lot of the common concerns. Now, I would like, to be honest with you, I agree with Chaos is saying that there's a lot going to the inmate population. It seems like staff's forgotten. I think that you would get more staff motivated if once in a while we got a bone. I agree with that. Inmates are getting free education, but well, give it to our staff once in a while. Give them something. I'm not going to argue that. If you provide some form of balance incentive, you'll find that staff will welcome whatever the changes are, but they do feel forgotten, and they have a right to feel forgotten because they've been forgotten for quite a while. Trust and believe that. I know that. Russ knows that. But I want to mention this just from a higher level. We can't be resistant to the change because it's going to happen without us. So we're going to have to find our way to find our piece in that pie. If we don't find our way to connect to that, then it's going to happen without our input. It's going to happen. And believe it or not, there's no venue for us. We created a venue. It's very limited. So now we're starting to get our thoughts out there. So I'm not going to blame the public 100% because I don't think there was avenues for them to know what was needed. So I'm not going to jump on them because, again, they don't know. But I will get pissed off when you know and then you just don't think it's necessary. Because I've talked to people, and once I explain my side, the side being so simplistic to understand, they'll quickly say, holy shit, I didn't think of it from that perspective. It's that simple. But again, when you have those conversations, you have to have confidence in what you're saying, and you have to have respect for this profession. If you're going to sit there and you're talking to someone and you're dogging it and you're from the front line, if you don't respect what you do, they're not going to fucking respect what you do. But the key is at the end of the dialogue is Chaos, you're 100% correct. The way it's going is one way. It's 100% correct. But that's because we're resistant. What we need to do is we need to find our peace in that, and then we need to make it evident. But the way it's going to be is this. It's not working in separate directions. It's working together for that mission. It's eclectic, yes, but it's also collective. And I'm going to tell you something right now. You know where that starts first? Let me tell you what I did indirectly that I didn't realize I did one day. I once told somebody when I was fresh in this field, after working with inmates, and this one inmate really pissed me off, I said, you know what? I don't believe inmates can change. Do you know who I offended? I didn't offend the inmate. I offended that department social worker who was busting her ass every day to do what she could. And I said, holy shit, I didn't realize that. But that's a peer of mine, technically, right? She's correctional. I know we have these issues with civilians, but we'll work on that. But I said something that was very disrespectful to her because I was pissed at the inmate. At the end of the day, the inmate's laughing. He sees the divide. So I think, honestly, we'll believe in the mission and we'll believe what has to happen if we start believing in the people that work with us. And at the end of the day, that's going to have a great environment for us, increase employee morale, and we'll be part of the change. So when they have these table talks and they say, well, this is going, you'll be a welcome person to that conversation and say, well, what do you think? You think this will work? It could. But here's the one last thing, and I'll give it to Russ. They're not looking for excuses not to make it work. That's not the key, because they're going to work around you. You have to be willing to say, okay, it could work, but these are the things we're going to have to do, and let them see if those things are feasible. Give them those impossible solutions if need be. But the one thing they don't want is resistance now. No, I'm not going to do that. No, we can't do that. We can't. It's going to happen. So how do you make it work? You make it work. But I will tell you one thing. Custody and correctional staff in general, they can make anything work if they work together. I have seen it. There's no excuse. You can make anything work. And again, I would like to see balance change both ways. And that was a great question, Chaos. I'm glad you brought it up. Phenomenal question. Thank you. What's your thoughts on that, Russ, that partnership, that working together, the changes?
Yeah, you know, it's funny the way this conversation is going right now. I was just talking to a good friend of mine the other day, and he was talking about some of the things that are coming down from his department that are making things very difficult, maybe even impossible to, you know, be able to implement things like rehabilitation, because what's happened is you've had such a swing from being able to control some of these large prison systems and populations through the use of good sound policies like SHU units and things like that, but they've just opened up the floodgates. And so the temptation is to throw up your hands and just, well, what do we do now? Well, you know what? Somebody has to find some answers. At some point, it's going to have to be wrangled back. There's going to but the main thing is there's going to have to be new pathways found. We're going to have to find ways to implement things until we can wrestle some of these tools back. And I mean, it's a terrible thing, I think, to have to go through, but the one solution that I know that's not going to work is to just simply throw up our hands and just give up. And so there may be times where, even though we don't feel it, we may have to partner with some of these stakeholders that do not share our vision of what works. How much we can influence them, I don't know. That's part of the reason why I do what I do here, though, because I know that there's times where I need to give people the ideas and the words to get this across to those stakeholders. And I think that's about all I can say.
Well, yeah, but you're dead on, Russ. You know, for a while when we were doing this, I was resistant because I was very myopic in my perspective of where I thought corrections need to be, because I felt that custody was forgotten, and I focused my need for where they needed to be based on just that one view of protecting custody, which needed it. I'm not minimizing that, but hear me out. I did not see the bigger picture. So as I started to move up, I think it was as, you know, when I was an officer, I always did look around. I always interacted because I love people. So I interacted with other departments and I really got a taste of what they did. But I kind of knew there was the interaction, but I really didn't understand the ripple effect of how these interactions play out, especially if, you know, if we don't work in that dance, that partnership. As a supervisor, I definitely saw it. Even as a frontline sergeant, I saw it, because most of the time you're going to be dealing with those other department heads directly, or those other department supervisors directly. So, you know, and again, because now you're starting to see the bigger picture and you have to bring things together, because again, it really is. We're working partnerships here. When I got to administration, and I'm, you know, again, being right below a warden, well, two steps below a warden, you know, but being able to, you know, I could run a prison. That would be my job if the person calls out, or goes on vacation. So I can run a prison. You're a facilitator. So what you do is basically you connect the departments and you make sure they all work. And when you do that, you have to understand how the departments work, how they interact with each other, and how one decision can have a ripple effect on what the mission is. So the key here is this. I pulled myself back and I said, what is the mission? As an officer, to me, it was always safety and security. That's it. But that's not the mission of the agency. The mission of the agency should be safety and security balanced with rehabilitation. Evolution in corrections is crazy, because at one point we were just all about safety and security. That's it. That's all we cared about. That's what it was. Now it's more about rehabilitation. Here's where we come in now. This is our time to bring the balance. Yeah, I believe in rehabilitation, but you can't forget safety and security. So just to think a little bit in the future, the balance, the evolution, where corrections has to be is going to be that ultimate balance between safety and security and rehabilitation. It's not on the extremes. They're in the middle, guys. They're in the middle. But we are the ones that are going to have to bring that in the middle. And I promise you guys this is the key that people don't realize. If we do that, we'll bring ourselves together as one, because we'll be fostering the partnerships with the departments that we seem to work isolated from. You know, we shouldn't be working isolated from isolation from those other departments. They're on our team. So the thing is, if we believe that this is the mission, and we believe that we have to work together to achieve that mission, then that starts to give me respect for the people that are helping me do it. You know, there should be no reason why, you know, I can't shoot the shit with Joe Schmo who works in maintenance, you know, and value Joe Schmo, just like, you know, Joe Schmo should value me, John Doe, whatever it is, for working in custody. Because ultimately we have that mission to work together to get the job done. But my concern is this: if we're resistant, change is going to happen anyway, and we're going to lose. We're going to lose because, to be honest with you, our perspective is not where it is. So we have to remind people that this perspective is needed, and how do we partner that with what you have going on. And trust me, guys, every time I go on these networks, there's angles. There's no angle for us. There's no angle for us. There's no angle for us. I can't mention concerns. No one cares about our concerns from either side. So I have to find out which side kind of betters us as the profession. And to be honest with you, it's the side that's kind of leaning with the inmates only because the changes that they want. I mean, you have inmates in Texas wanting air condition. What custody wouldn't want air condition? You know, there's a lot of changes that are similar. And, you know, if I have to go that route to make it better for us, you know, I have to. You have to do whatever you can to make it better for us. And it's sad to say, but we cannot work in resistance. We can't. We have to try to figure out where we fit because it's going to move without us. And if we sit there and just let it go, it's going to get worse. So we just have to figure out our place. And if you're a frontline officer now, look to the left and right, see what the other people do, check out the other departments, and try to grow with the machine. If you don't grow, it's going to happen regardless, with or without you. And I don't know if Russ agrees with this too, but I don't believe people are replaceable. I disagree with that. I know a lot of people will say, well, you know, you're just this, you could be replaced by anybody. And the reason why I don't believe that is maybe in our position, anybody could do our job. Technically, I don't know. I mean, anybody could work in my position, you know, whatever. But I've seen people impact people. I've seen one person create such a positive morale with everyone, every department. And they did what they could every day to bring those departments together. And I've been to a service for this individual, because this individual passed. And I'm going to tell you something. I've been to other services where it was isolated. You go to the service where this person was just worried about himself or whatever. You know, we go there because we have to go there. That's our brother. But we're not as moved. We just go there because it's a formality. But then you get this one person here who made an effort to interact. You get all these departments coming in and they're just devastated. They're lost. That's something that's not replaceable. That's that individual. That individual had an impact. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to find our place in this profession. And the place in this profession, like for me, I'm finding my place. This is my place. I love this profession. My place is sitting here with Russ, sitting here with you guys, and just shooting the shit. This is my enjoyment. My place is to make people know of how honorable the work is that we do. What's your place? You know, what's your place going to be? You know, Chaos is going to be retiring hopefully in 8 years. I want you to retire, Chaos, knowing that you did a great service for the public. And I want you to retire, first off, knowing that you were appreciated. But I want you to retire knowing that, you know, what you did was a benefit, you know, and that you were with the change. So when you leave, you weren't someone that was working in yesterday. You made an effort to leave your impact on tomorrow, because that's where we're going to be. And you have the power to do that, because your experience, 20 years of something of experience, could have a tremendous impact on where we need to be tomorrow. Don't let that experience disappear because you want to be resistant to what, you know, the changes that are happening, because you could be a tremendous, powerful person to help govern the change that we need to survive. So please, Chaos, I know we're talking, you know, kind of, that's my boy Chaos, so he knows I'm sincere with this. I would love for you to try to see the bigger picture, because I'm telling you something right now. If you were to make an effort to put some of that experience for that real good change, we would benefit on a high level. 20 years of experience. I would love to have you on. I can't imagine what you'll be able to share with us that could make me grow, make Russ grow, make my audience grow. I have a lot of respect for you, brother. I really do. What are your thoughts on that, Russ?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. You know, as we move through this difficult time in corrections, and I think this is probably pretty true across the U.S. right now. We're going to move through this difficult time, and we're going to lose a depth of talent to this. And I would like to see as much of that talent retained as possible. I don't know how much of that's going to happen. I think, and that's why I want to reach out to people like this guy Chaos. You know, he's going to have to put that time in, and I'm sure it's going to be fruitful for him. You know, because you know he's going to end up getting his pension, and I'm sure that he's going to make an impact in security. But I really would like him to stay engaged so that his impact extends beyond his last day there on the tiers. I would like to see a guy like that. I would like to see his impact continue on for, you know, years or decades after he leaves. He might never even understand how much capacity he has to cause that change, to cause that ripple clear across the pond, to propagate across there, you know. But offering nothing but resistance probably won't cause that to happen. Now, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be things that we should resist,
Right.
but it can't be only resistance, because only resistance, that effect's going to stop before it gets started. So, you know, I'm having a little hard time here, I think, making myself plain and understood, but that's really what I feel deep down, you know.
No, but I feel you, Russ. I know what you're saying. I feel it 100%, because the problem is we're going through this change, and a lot of people that can really help balance the change are a little resistant, because, you know, I would be resistant too, because you feel forgotten for so long. I just don't want someone like Chaos, like myself, to get to the point where we're so resistant that we just kind of walk away without leaving that impact that the profession needs. A guy like Chaos for over 20 years has an impact that he can create. That needs to have a footprint in this profession. And I don't want someone to, you know, get so frustrated with the changes that they get disenfranchised and they kind of go against the system, as opposed to saying, listen, this is where the system's headed. How could I affect it? How could I add to that? As opposed to, I'm just not going to go with it. And I think we're losing a lot of good people that way. And that's why I'm passionate about what we're actually saying. Yeah, we love you, Chaos. He thanks everything for what we're saying, because we know Chaos has been with this channel for quite some time. And the reason why this is passionate to me is because I see a lot of people being disenfranchised because they know changes are happening. They may not understand why, because sometimes I don't understand why. But even in this higher position, I want to make sure that we're a part of it. Because if we're not, trust me, you think it's one-sided now. I mean, there are some people speaking, but it's only going to get worse if we don't kind of work with it. Let me give you an example real quick. I'll give you an example. You know, right now, there's a movement right now to get rid of these restrictive housing units, because the public kind of thinks they're solitary confinement, administrative segregation, all that stuff. And they look at a very primitive notion. You know, inmates are forgotten. They're in the dark. They're pissing in buckets and throwing it out windows. And we know that's not the case. I mean, in some states, these areas are heavily programmed. These inmates are out of their cells constantly. I mean, it's just the public has it all twisted. But what they do is they generalize extremes. Fair enough. So what happens here is sometimes people don't realize why we have to put those programs in those areas, because if we don't, they're going to get rid of the RHU anyway. So you have to make an effort to go against whatever arguments people can go fight against this. I'll give you an example. So RHU, well, they're not programming. Yes, they are. They're not out of their cells. Yes, they are. Well, you can't have someone maxing out from ACSU. Well, you know, if they're getting close to maxing out, we may cut them 30 days before they get released. Whatever the case may be, you go against the arguments. That's part of the change. The problem here is when you have people that don't want, nope, we can't do it. We can't do it. We can't do it. Yeah, but you have to do it. So if you're going to keep on coming up to this table and saying that it can't be done, I don't need you at this table, because it has to be done. So even let's say if I'm management and I have to implement a plan, the people I don't want at the table are the people that are going to come up with 20 million excuses not to do it. I just need to know, we have to do it. Make it happen. So a lot of people will get so frustrated they leave, and then they get mad because we're going to do the plan anyway. But, you know, obviously they're not a part of it now, you know, so their input is not there because they got so mad. We got to do this shit anyway. It's bullshit. No one's listening to us, blah, blah, blah. Well, but you're not giving me solutions. You're giving me more problems. There's no sense of, I'm telling you, it has to get done. Now you leave the table. Now you're definitely not being heard. So when we have those discussions on changes that have to happen, and you can see they have to happen, you don't want to run away from that. You want to be part of that, because I will tell you something. Once you're part of it, you'll see that the changes will actually be beneficial. It only becomes negative when you come to that table and you're resistant, and then the changes are going to happen anyway, and now you got no say in any of it. And I'm sure, Russ, you've seen that in the career with corrections and, you know, the evolution. I mean, you've been in corrections for almost 30 years. I mean, what are some of the changes that you've seen that you felt had the greatest impact? But I'm sure at some point you were resistant at first, and you may have come back and said, well, you know what, actually that was needed. Thank God we stayed and participated in that.
Yeah, you know, I think right now at this point, it's hard for me looking back to see that, because I do see a lot of the negative things that are blossoming and coming our way. And, you know, all we're going to be able to do is be able to change the direction and flow enough, hopefully to keep things progressing enough for us to be able to move forward. There's some battles where we're going to have to take things back. There's some battles that we're going to lose along the way. There's going to be situations where it's just not going to be what we would like it to be. Our best hope is to be able to have input to a degree on every single little thing that comes along. Maybe we can change each single little thing 1 or 2% to make an impact along the way, so that we can change the arc of where this thing is going. That's the best I've got.
Right, and on a side note, maybe one day we can have Chaos on, because he's a field training officer. I think he could share so much. I think we had him on a video before, if I remember. Because sometimes we do these submissions for videos where I get people's advice, but I forget. But he always comments in all our videos, and he's got some great, just him and was it Smitty? A couple of them, a lot of people. Amber, we just have a very good community. Yeah, okay, he was on. I thought so. Hey, the gentleman Seth Taylor asked, what do you think? What do you guys think about the black cop from 60 Days In? So on the most recent season of 60 Days In, they had you know who he is. I did a video on this already. I'll just be quick with this answer. I think he's an embarrassment. I think he was disrespectful to the correctional profession. And as a fellow law enforcement professional, because I did a video on this guy, I think he's an embarrassment as a police officer. But how I don't know if A&E or that company, what is it, Flight or Fight or 8 Ball, whatever they're called, I don't know if they manipulated this guy into saying stuff, but I'm pissed off at him because he had no respect for us. I saw that one video. I put it up on my thing. So I do have a video on this guy, and he totally has no respect for who we are as a profession. So I have no respect for him at all. And I was actually giving him the benefit of the doubt the first couple episodes until he said that remark about correctional officers. You remember that, Russ? I posted a video on that.
I remember it. I saw it. And yeah, whatever he said, why he said it, to sensationalize it, to downgrade us, to try and score some points, to get a few more viewers or whatever the reasons were. This is a noble profession. It's a noble field. I've seen unbelievable acts of courage, every day in this profession, and across and not just in 1 or 2 facilities, but across the United States. So you know what? Any guy that wants to say that bullshit to me or about us, you know what? They can stow it. They can, because I know better. I know better.
Yeah, you know what, Amber? I mean, we'll probably get going soon, but we have 20 people in here, so I just want to do maybe a little bit more of a dialogue here. Amber mentioned something that I would like to repeat. I'm looking at some of the older things. Guys, feel free to ask some questions. We're still going through some of the questions here. She said that every police officer should work in a county jail or prison at least a year or so they understand the job we do. I'm going to tell you why I'm a big fan of that, and I'm glad you brought that up, Amber. And again, when you work in a prison or jail, I mentioned this before, you're forced to learn how to communicate. And I think that could be a good thing when it comes to de-escalation, especially when working in the streets. And I think that not all guys, again, I don't want to generalize a profession. That's not like me. I'm not going to do that. But I think that when you're in a position to go right for your weapon, you may not always look to communicate. Where corrections, we have these forced interactions. Corrections puts us in a lot of situations where we're forced to interact with people that we wouldn't normally interact with. And I think that's one of the benefits I got from working in this profession, because I've learned how to communicate with almost anybody, and it's through these forced interactions. So I think I'm pretty good at de-escalating techniques. I try to you can be empathetic, you can't be sympathetic, but I do try to see things from other people's perspective, and I'm very self-aware of how I think I'm coming across. That's the key. And I think that if we had more people working in a prison or jail at first before they went onto the streets as police, I think it would be very beneficial. And I think it's something that should be mandated because, again, it humbles you. You work in a prison or a jail, it does humble you. Crazy as it may sound, it does humble you. And I'm going to tell you something. We're the ones that, what's funny is that we're the ones that handle those riot situations. We're the people that they call to assist. You know what I mean? we are the king of communication. Corrections is the king of communication because that's how we survive. How does one officer survive walking on a tier of 100 to 200 inmates? It's communication. You know, I once dealt with somebody that once, I don't think he knew I worked in the profession, and we're sitting at this table and we're having this discussion, and he works at a county facility, and he's just chatting, and I'm kind of asking him what it's like to work in the county, and I'm not telling him what I do yet. So he starts coming off of this Billy Badass that, you know, he goes in and he busts these inmates around, just tears them off the bunk bed and all this other shit. And in my mind, I don't think any of that's true. That's one thing. But second thing is if that was me and I was your partner, I'd be correcting you right off the bat. I don't want fire starters in my unit. I want easy shifts. I'm not out to bust heads. That's not how I roll. So anyway, once he was said and done, he said all this other stuff. And I said, oh, you know, is that what you do all day? And he's like, yep, I don't fucking take shit from these guys, blah, blah, blah. You know, I said, wow, you know, if I was your partner, man, that must be hard for your partner. And he goes, no, you know, my partner lets me do me. He goes, why? What do you do for a living? I said, I'm a superintendent of a state facility. So right off the bat, if I knew you were doing that for no reason, I would have you investigated. You know, because you're making it, here's the funny thing, you're making it rough for the other officers that are going to have to walk that tier. You're rallying up those inmates. So you don't realize how much your action is now going to impact the officer who maybe when the inmates are fed up, one day they're going to come after whoever's on that tier, and it's not going to be you because you're going to call off. And they're going to get this officer who plans in motion. It's too late. You know, and that happens. We fire start some shit. And then now you're not the one that's taking it. It's the other guy who's coming and had nothing to do with it. So don't rile inmates up, you know. There was another good question that came our way here from, where is it? I just saw it. It comes from, where is it? Thorfinn Gaiman. How many inmates do you think is too many inmates for one CO to handle safely in a housing unit? So basically a ratio. So want me to go, Russ, you want to go first? Want me to go first? Because
yeah, I'd like to do this.
Yeah.
You know what? One is too many, but we live in the real world, right? So the thing that you really have to take into consideration is you know what your span of control is and how much backup that you can get there in time to stop an issue from happening or to settle an issue out. So if that span of control between the amount of response that you can get there and what that particular officer has as resources to him immediately. In some of the cell buildings that I worked and stuff, we had a lot of resources, even though we only had 2 officers and we would have 200 inmates out there, because we almost always had lethal force available to us because we always had a gun in the booth, rifle Mini 14. So our amount that we could handle was that 200. It was everybody that was assigned to that particular building. So when you look at it from that standpoint, that's good. But I've seen lots of county jails and other detention facilities and even some state prisons that don't have those kind of resources available, and they underman their shifts, they underman their units, and they drive things to a point where they can boil over and end up in a really bad situation simply because they don't have enough manpower. So what that magic number is, I don't know. This I will tell you though is there's a lot of misinformation that comes about those numbers, because a lot of times when you're hearing about what a ratio is, they'll take everybody that's assigned to every shift and every secretary and doctor and divide that out, and you'll hear some amazing things like, wow, they have a 1 to 15 ratio. No, they don't. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
No, but I want to answer that question, but real quick, I like what Seth Taylor just said. I'm a police officer. My wife's a CO. I respect everybody the same as long as you're acting professional. That is well said. I agree, Seth. Hey, I want to mention the ratio. Okay, so basically there really is no set ratio. Policy, institutional policies may have something in play, but it really does depend on the layout of the facility or the unit. you know, if you have a lockdown unit, like dorms, I would like to see, again, I don't know the number, but I would always like to see 2 officers on a dorm, walking the floors, and then 1 officer in a secured area watching their back, and maybe another area as well. Cause sometimes the officers in the control bubble, they can maybe oversee 2, but I definitely want 2 on the floor. You got to realize something, we work in corrections. It's never really going to be every inmate going after 1 officer. You know, they're usually groups, or maybe most of the time it's just a problematic one. But now when you have dorms, you do have those gangs. You do have inmates that are united. And the last thing we want to do is unite inmates. Sometimes when you have to issue a policy in play and the policy affects all the inmate population, management may not realize that if you implement this policy too quick, you're going to unite the inmates, and the officer on the floor that has to implement that policy, you just put that officer at risk because of the fact that you're uniting these inmates on something that really should have been kind of piecemealed or whatever. It was really discussed with the population. Again, you don't want inmates uniting. That's the last thing. That's our biggest threat, is inmate unity. But for the most part, when you have a problem with an inmate, it's usually a specific few, and usually can be pretty much handled for the most part, you know, because technically it has to be, because we'd be losing prisons all day. You know, we'd be losing it all day. So there is a level of control that just that presence has. But for number, there's really no number. It really goes to how the facility is laid out, and can you get those areas effectively in regards to the routine tours, stuff like that. Like, and can you see things clearly? So I've seen, you know, 1 officer worker unit that had 160 inmates, but it was a lockdown unit and was cell by cell. Is it too many inmates? He could see them all. That was the key. Now, if those same 160 were an open dorm, definitely too much. But in this case here, they were secured. You know, so I don't know. I would definitely look at the layout first, see how the layout of that area is, and then go by the layout. But again, with dorms, minimal 2. Again, I don't know the number, but minimal 2 officers on that floor, 1 officer in a controlled area that they can't get to, that can kind of be the eyes above. I have another good question, Russ, that was sent our way from gaming. This is a very good question. How long do you think a CO should be trained on a housing unit before he or she is left alone?
Well, that is a good question, but it really just, you know, begs the thing is when you're qualified, when you're certified, and you go in there, it's that day. That's all the training you get is your training is going in there and reading those post orders. And hopefully you get some backup. Hopefully you get some staff that are going to tip you up to what's going on. But you know, usually you're considered, you know, ready to go. Now, if there's some things that are more complicated, like perhaps working a control panel, knowing who can come in, who can go out, that kind of thing, hopefully you're going to get some direction from a supervisor or from an officer in the know. But generally, there's this amount of time, 0, spent on learning, you know, how to work a specific unit. I was in a position for my first 2 years where I had basically a different job every day, and so it was a situation where I had to be able to figure out what was going on in a hurry and know what I was doing, and no 2 jobs were necessarily alike. So I would like to see a familiarity process with someone being dropped into a position that they work more regularly. They tend to do that a lot, I'm told, in Texas, where you're in a specific spot. You may not even work a different unit in the whole time you're at a spot there in Texas, so I'm told. But I'd like to see a familiarity of at least, you know, 2 or 3 days. But I've never really seen a facility that would actually do that. It's so labor intensive that they don't want to spend the money.
Well, you know what? Some facilities do have bidded posts, so you wind up getting that familiarity. But some people also believe that you should float the officers around so they don't become too complacent. So kind of, you know, you really have to somewhere where that middle is navigate through. For me, you know, and guys, we'll have asked a couple more questions, then we'll head out because I see Russ is getting tired too. But we got definitely going to do this again, guys. We're going to find a consistent schedule so we know maybe every Friday night we could do live shows. I think Friday night seems to work. This was a rough beginning at first, but we got it through, and the audience really made us. The fact that we're able to answer the questions. Maybe I'll even do some live one on my own, or if I'm not around, Russ can have access to my channel. And one day I'll be watching my channel with Russ starring on it, doing live questions. But obviously, if Russ wants to do that, that's fine. But when it comes to running a housing unit, to me, that's one of the hardest positions in the facility. There's just so much going on, so many lives, and just so many things that you're responsible for. I think it really depends on the officer and when they feel they could be effective. When the officers work, when you're just learning a housing unit, the officer that's training you kind of has to give you a lot of autonomy. I don't want the inmates thinking that you're dependent, because God forbid when that officer leaves and the inmates feel that you're still dependent on that CO, you're not ready. So I think it's at a level that when the trainer's training you, it's in an effort to let you go, to make sure that you're going to make your own decisions, and then eventually they kind of just disappear, if you will. If they show too much dependence, then they just leave, and you're still coming off as being dependent. The inmates are going to see that. Now, also, when it comes to running a housing unit, there's a lot of discretion that's involved. As a rookie, I'm going to say write up everything, but as you become a senior officer, you can kind of manage your unit with more discretion, and just, this may require a write up, this may not. But someone asked me, should you write up everything, when you work in a housing unit? When you are new, I would say yes, because they could be testing you. But as you develop discretion, you get experience, it may maneuver a little different. But for me, I think the answer to that really depends on the individual, and also depends on the training officer too, because I would think the person that's training you should be able to go back and say this person's ready or this person's not ready. Because I've had that. Like, I've trained with people, and they would say, hey, you're not ready for this unit, or you are ready for this unit. It really depends on how you take that information and what you do with it. But again, I don't think that's like when someone asks you, how long should it, it take for you to become a supervisor? I mean, technically, there's really not a time limit. I mean, you could work at a facility that's so fast moving that it's happening that in 3 years, you can learn more than someone who worked at a facility for 20 years that has no action. So it really does depend on the individual and the situations that they're in and what they take from it. So for a housing unit, if I was a senior officer, again, I'm just going to go back and make a judgment call based on how I feel that individuals take in what's being presented to them. And again, a lot of it, really managing a housing unit, there's talent in that too. It's innate talent. There really is. There's talent in managing so many people at once. So what I'm going to look for is, as a training officer, the key I'm going to look for is this person confident in their authority? That's my key when you're running a housing unit. Are your orders coming off with confidence? And if I feel that you're being hesitant in any way, and even if you feel that you're hesitant, you're not ready. Not for a housing unit. You're not ready. Because if you're coming off hesitant, the inmates are going to challenge that. Got some more questions, Russ. Maybe we'll do a few more, then we'll call it quits real quick.
Quick them out there.
John, this will be a quick question because John Doe asked a good question. I do want to get to it. Do you think we should perhaps lean towards giving more officers gang intelligence skills? That's an easy yes for me, Russ.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody should be, scratching and clawing to get as much gang training as they can. With me, I was always hungry. I was going to California Gang Task Force meetings and footing my own bill, paying for my own hotel, all the gas down there, and then every chance I got to read something or find something online and networking with other officers. But that's just me. That's just the way that I came into the department, and I always wanted to be as effective as possible.
Well, you know what? With the gang intelligence, I was a big fan of making sure the officers know because the inmates know. So the inmates are going to have more knowledge on the officers. So I believe the officers should know, and identifying is key, because if, Obviously, that's what's going to protect the officer, help them make run a more effective housing unit. So if the inmates have knowledge, because trust me, they know the gangs, they know they have to survive on that. And you're not telling the officers that. I mean, maybe there's certain things like there's investigations going on. I'm not talking about that, but I'm definitely talking about gang identification. And also, I'm going to tell you something. The gang intelligence really does come from the frontline officers on the floor. So if they're providing you with information, and again, I'm not talking about investigation, I'm just talking about 101 information. Like, is this inmate a gang member? Why is that a secret? The unit knows. Trust and believe. That's the unit knows. So if the inmates have a chance of knowing that information and you're not telling the officer, I only think that's putting the officer at risk. And again, we're talking about gang identification. I'm not talking about, there are some investigations that could be gang related. I understand you don't want to get that out to the population. I respect that. I'm not saying that. If someone's telling you stuff, you want to protect the information. I understand that. But when it comes to simple, I'm not going to tell you what that tattoo means, or I'm not going to tell you what his alias is. Let me tell you something. You're not telling the officer what that alias is, but every inmate on this unit's calling that inmate by his alias. So all you're doing is messing with the officer now, who now the inmates have more information than him and, or her. And why are you putting the officer in that disadvantage? It doesn't make any sense to me. That never made sense to me at all, because I've been through that before. There's a good question here that comes from John Doe. Is it a good idea to put new officers in more dangerous units, such as control units, death row, etc., where mistakes are more likely to get you killed? I'm going to start off with that. I know Russ is going to jump on that, but I have Russ, that's a good question. I want to answer that. Maybe Russ could be more specific with the unit, like the death row aspect, but I do want to tell you one thing. I'm going to do my argument, John, let's talk about like a full min unit, or whatever the lower number. So full min, where the inmates have the least amount of restrictions, to where inmate has the most amount of restrictions. I would start an officer at the highest level possible, right? Let them know, let them build that sense of security, that sense of safety. Let them be aware of that, because when you go to full min, it becomes very complacent out there. It does. People don't realize it. It's in that case, the mindset of the inmate could be different. Nothing's 100%, but they're focused on leaving, where you have the inmates that are behind the wall that are, focused on playing the game inside. Let the officer get used to the tightness of security, the tightness of running a safe and secure unit, and let them be a good foundation that they can carry with them no matter where they go. But if you start an officer off at a least restrictive area, I think they present more of a risk, because the foundation is going to be weak. And then when they go to the higher levels, they're going to present a risk. I actually tell officers that if you've been working full min for years, and then all of a sudden you get a new post in a maximum area, you should get retrained, because you may not realize how complacent you've become, because full min, listen, I know we want to treat all inmates the same, and I agree with that. I don't care if they're a full min or a max. I treat all inmates the same, but the environment is different, and we may not realize how that environment has affected us. So we may need a wake-up call. There's nothing wrong. Maybe you don't need it, but maybe you do. So again, start with the highest foundation first. And again, that's why you have partners too. I know he mentioned that a mistake can get you killed, but that's why you're not alone. I don't believe in the sink or swim. Remember that. So the fact that you're going to have senior staff that's going to ensure that you don't make those mistakes that get you killed, but they're going to help create such a great level. Like, I think everybody should start at a max facility, start at the highest level possible, and bring that skill set down. You start at minimum, it's very hard to bring that skill set up. What's your thoughts on that, Russ? I don't know if we're on the same page with that.
Yeah, I'd say we're on the same page. I think one thing to consider though is, when you're working something like a SHU unit and or death row. My first day was on death row. Is you have to remember that in those units, there's not a whole lot of communication that really takes place between you and an inmate that's critical. The program kind of takes care of itself, and as long as you pay attention, you can kind of scrape by, as long as you don't do anything that's really egregious. It doesn't take a lot of talent to run that absolute max unit per se. I mean, you have to have the skills to handcuff them through the port and things like that, but a lot of times there's only so much you can learn. So I think it's fine to start someone there, as long as they have some good supervision, some observation of what they're doing. And I think that they should be made aware of the bad things that can happen if you make simple little mistakes. And you should be pairing them with officers that don't make those mistakes, that aren't complacent, and don't do things. I was involved in a discussion, you know, not too long ago, where an officer got complacent and he wasn't watching what he was doing, or he was watching what he was doing with the door, but he just didn't take it seriously, and he ended up getting stabbed because he was just trying to take the inmate out of cuffs without securing the door. So, so you have to have officers there that are watching these new boots, instilling and inculcating into them, you know, good, solid policy and procedure, and not letting them deviate from it. Those are, like, for lack of a better term, those are their training wheels, you know, and you're getting them used to being exposed to a high stress environment. And even though it's high stress, it's also highly controlled. So you have some firewalls and things that are built in where hopefully it's not actually going to get that out of hand, that there is a death. Now, I'm not saying it won't happen, but I'm saying that you have a lot of redundancy built in. Then as they develop these skills and they've developed that mindset and they've learned to deal with that stress, then hopefully, you know, you start putting them in situations where they have more interaction, where they can start learning those communication skills. But in a SHU unit or a real high security unit, they're not going to learn that part of the job if they don't get out there eventually.
Right, and I believe that taking it from the highest level down is more safe than taking it from the lowest level up, because the highest level creates such a great foundation to work off of, because now you know this.
Because those, you know what, those high level inmates know how to exploit chinks in the armor. You know, I've seen it. I mean, I've dealt with some stone cold killers that were, you know, really truly dangerous guys that would sit there and practice for hours, tie their hands behind their own backs and pretend that they had cuffs on, and coming around hour after hour. And it was really unnerving being around guys like that, especially when you had them in cuffs leading them down the hallway, you know.
And like you mentioned, you have to know that those chinks could possibly exist. Now, guys, as we start to come to a close, first off, I think we may be doing this more often. I'm going to try to get a consistent time when it comes to live. So I'm thinking, you know, Friday nights may be good. Again, this was just a test run. I think it went very well. I mean, we had an audience of over 20. That's very good, and a very interactive audience. So I want to thank you guys for participating. But I just want to run over some things that we're going to be doing with the channel soon. I'll let you guys know, kind of as a, you know, a little bit of a, I mean, hopefully it's kind of like a gift, I guess, because I haven't really mentioned a lot of it, but me and Russ have been talking on the side. So just to give you guys a little bit of an idea, I got to get to that 10,000 mark, which is happening. I'm at 9,114. So I do have a push to get to 10,000. 10,000 creates us a little bit of a venue, free access to a YouTube studio, may get me important guests that can actually create more of an impact for us. So, you know, now we have these dialogues, but the question is what do we do with these dialogues? Where do we take these dialogues? You know, we don't just want to leave it here at this table. Plus, we have a lot of Facebook groups that are out there. Now, I know a lot of you guys, this may be your only platform, but on Facebook, there's very good supportive groups, Keepers of Chaos, which Russ runs, which is almost at 3,000. You have to be close to 3,000 by now. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm closing in on 3,000. I'll probably do a drive and close that off in the next 10 days or so.
Yeah, and then, you know, we have the Facebook page of Tier Talk, which is 27 or 28,000. Corrections Brotherhood, which is another 50, 60,000. These are groups that have a very good presence on Facebook. What we need to do now is find a way to have these groups exist outside of social media, which means that we have to find a way to get events. I know Russ is seeing what we could do with the Keepers of Chaos. Now, the best time to do it, guys, is when we're small. So believe it or not, the Correctional Officer Brother, which has 50 or 60,000 members, it's a very big, diverse group. That may be harder to get people together than Russ's group of 3,000 right now, because it should be a tight-knit group. We should know each other. Same thing with the Tier Talk YouTube channel. I know a lot of my people that participate. We have a very good interaction. So just imagine right now, if I had all, at one point we were at 21, what are we at, 16 or 17? You know, 16, all of us in one room chatting, shooting the breeze. But the key is just to connect, but to show people that we can connect outside of social media, that we're more than just, this. And again, we'll do events. We'll figure out how that works. Also, me and Russ are also, again, this doesn't cost anything to you guys. This is what we want to bring back to the profession. We're going to do some training. The training is, it's not going to be done publicly. It's going to be done in a manner where we'll give you the numbers to get in, but you're going to have to prove to us that, well, some of us we know already that do, but it's going to be not something we're going to share out to everyone. It's not going to be for public information. So I don't know if we may hold the training on the YouTube channel, which we could do it privately, and then you guys give me your emails. Again, you're going to have to watch my videos, because I may just say in one of my videos, say, guys, we're doing a training on, let's say, inmate manipulation. Ganji's going to be speaking. If you're interested, email me, and the day we go out training, whatever, I'll give you the number. I may have other people come and take the venue for me and say, hey, you guys mind doing a training on transformational leadership? Where's Michael Pataro? Russ, do you mind doing some training on security concerns, security, whatever it is? Whatever it is, it's going to be training that's going to be done in a private manner, not released to everyone. And again, I'm going to want to see that you work in the profession. And again, obviously people who would understand why, because it's just something, and plus training like that's not offered to everybody. So that would be key. Second thing is also, another thing is, me and Russ were talking about consultations, right, Russ? Were you doing consultations? So we'll talk about that. That's later on down the line. That's if you have any concerns, we're giving you ways to contact us, and whatever it is. All this is for you guys, trust me. So this is what we want to provide back. And the last thing is this. The venues that's been created is for everybody to get a chance. So if there's ever a chance you have something you want to share, this is this simple. I can get you on, I could do whatever. It's that simple. We want to hear your voice. That's the key. So I think what we'll do is, if it's okay, every Friday, I hope you guys are all got if you have smartphones, everybody's got the Correction One app. But what we maybe do is we may discuss issues that are trending. But I really like the Q&A. That's something that Russ brought up. And I think the Q&A is very interactive. So Russ, you would agree, right? The Q&A was pretty good.
Oh, you know what? I loved it. I loved, I hope the main thing was is that I helped, and that you helped somebody with whatever their question was,
And I think if you get a chance, check out, if you're on Facebook, check out Russ's Keepers of Chaos. I'm going to let Russ go because he's getting a little tired. I'm going to finish up some closing thoughts. Russ got to get up and jog in the morning. But Russ, thanks and maybe we'll do it again real quick. Just do one more test before we start making it a consistent schedule.
Oh, absolutely. And does everyone know that I'm on East Coast time? I am from California, but I'm here on the East Coast.
You're not? Yeah, I'm on East Coast. Yeah, I'm from New York. Well, New Jersey.
So we're up here. It's almost 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, that's what it is for me. 12:41. All right, so Russ, I'll catch up with you, man. I'm gonna finish off with the guys real quick. I just want to mention some future ideas. I'm gonna head off.
All right. So everyone, take care. Stay safe. I hope that everyone liked this, and man, I'm looking forward to doing it again. Definitely.
All right, brother. Take care, man.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. So just real quick, I don't know if they'll zoom me up. So basically, there is some direction for the channel. So the only thing is what I would ask is, make sure you share it. Make sure people know that this channel exists. It's an information channel. That's all it is. And basically, it's out to get information out there. I do want to keep the venue open for you guys. So if you guys, again, it's very important for me with this is that if you guys want to participate, I can give you that, because the only way we're going to learn is we have to share each other's stories. I mean, that's the key. We don't have to be so specific when we share the stories, but we have to share it. We could always share a story general, but there's so many things going on in corrections right now that could be so beneficial if someone else could know about it. And unfortunately, we hide good information in this profession because we're afraid that we're going to get in trouble. So most of the time, if we just ask our department will allow us to speak, as long as it's an effort, I think, to teach or educate. I think what I'm going to do very soon is, I've been wanting to put my inmate manipulation course up here. I mean, I have them in separate videos, kind of just talk, but I think I just want to do it straight up, just get it up there so you guys have that. That's a goal I want to put in place. If that's okay, if you guys want it. I think it's informative. We'll start with there. I got a lot of people contacting me now that want to kind of split on this venue, but When they come from the outside and I don't know what their purpose is, I don't just give people this venue. You know, I worked hard for this venue. My community trusts me. I trust my community. I need to know what type of information that you're giving out to my community. So I like to filter who it is. And if I feel that they serve a purpose for my community, that's the key. The community is a specific niche. And I want to make sure that whatever I put on this community relates to that specific niche, which is a very, very difficult niche. Corrections is a very, very difficult niche. But the cool thing is I have so many routes that I want this channel to go once I reach 10,000, and all of it really is a collective route. All of it just involves you. But the key is to kind of get involved now while the community is small. I get about little numbers here. I get about 400 to 500 subscribers a month. So we do increase. So you figure I should probably hit my 10,000 mark in the next 2 months, maybe. I'd like to get some favor from the YouTube algorithm, but you know, they don't promote our side of things as they should. So I may have to try to see if I can become a contributor to a network to expose the channel. And then in an effort, when I get the channel exposed, I bring you guys on to share your thoughts. Now, that's the key. The key is participation. Now, guys, I have connections to Corrections One as well. So if you guys feel that there's somebody in the field that has value and that you guys feel that may need a moment to just share their story, you have a smartphone, you know, video it, talk to the person, video it, give it to me, and I'll see if I can put it on. That's how important that is for me. If you feel that someone has value to you, then 9 times out of 10, that person's going to have value to me, to our profession. So I don't want these people to go unheard. I know a lot of people in this profession that left this profession that could have had a great impact because they had an impact on me. And unfortunately now their impact is lost because there wasn't a venue for them to release it. And I'm going to go back and find these people. But in the meantime, if you're in a position, you know, somebody that can have that impact, let's get them on here. You know, you could do it. You know, if you want, put the smartphone on them and let them share their story. And I'll post them up, because I'm telling you something, guys. We're losing people with experience faster than you know, and eventually stories that could be most beneficial will be lost to us. So this has also been kind of like becoming like an archive, if you will, of just good information that, you know, we don't want to get lost. And I'm, you know, giving that opportunity. I'm creating a venue here where we can have people come here and see or hear these stories from these individuals who literally have a lot to provide and still have a lot to provide. I mean, Russ has been out of the profession. He's got 30 years and he retired and came back. He's out of the profession for a year or two, and he's got some great advice. Now imagine if Russ decided, or Russ didn't have that venue. Look at all the stuff that would be lost. And you know what's funny, guys, is when people retire, you know, all that knowledge, if you don't keep that active and you retire, you lose it. And, you know, I don't want people to lose that. It could be something that we need. So Russ could be retired and long away from this profession, and look at all the value that would be gone because we didn't keep it active. We didn't keep a venue for him to communicate that value out. So having that venue, having that chance to do that can really provide great information. I'm sure every one of you that have watched this channel today, thank you for participating, by the way, has someone that you looked up to, has someone that you admired, you know, so give them this chance, you know, help me help reach the many who need this. There's a lot of states that don't have training. There's a lot of states that don't have nothing. You know, they don't offer nothing, and it's sad. And now I'm trying to do my best just to give whatever I could. But with your help, I'm telling you something, guys, we'll be remembered. A community like this will be remembered. And then when people sit there and try to bastardize the profession, we have an immediate thing for them to see. Don't just look at the videos from this guy here. Look at the community. Look at these professional answers. You're telling me that they're just guards? Look at the answers. Look at the comments. You tell me they don't care? Look at the comments. You know, one day what I'll do to prove people wrong, I'll do an episode on how inmate suicides affect us, because people just don't know. I've done video on that, but maybe one day I'll do it here and have that dialogue. And when people think that we're cold and insensitive, they'll read the comments and they'll see that we're not. The perception of this profession has been so bastardized because people don't understand who we are and the importance that we have. It's time that they realize that. And the way we bring people faith into this profession is by letting them see the people that wear the badge. They'll respect Amber. They'll respect Holy Cat. They'll respect John Doe. They'll respect Chaos. And through you guys, they'll respect the profession. But we have to give them a reason to respect the profession. The profession is secondary. It's us first. You know, in corrections, the difference between us and street police is that street police have the power of the uniform because you don't deal with police every day. So that power of the uniform carries a lot of weight. Corrections doesn't have that. People get used to the uniform in corrections. They're conditioned to it. They, you know, inmates see it every day. They respect the individual. And I think for us, that's the key. If we can get people to respect us, if we can get people to see us for who we are, they'll start respecting the profession. But they will never respect the profession if they don't respect the people who work in it. And if you don't believe that what you do is important, then don't get mad when the public don't believe it. Don't get mad that if you think it's shit and the public thinks you're shit, that's you. Because there are going to be moments right now where you have a chance to let people know that this profession is more important than most people know. Every time you sit down, I always steal every conversation I'm in, all the time. When people find out that I'm in corrections, they want to hear what it's about. Now, I could give the story one of two ways. I could say it's a shitty profession, have my behavior carry that out, and just badmouth it. Or I could puff out my chest, hold my head up high, think about all the brave men and women I work with, and really give a good picture of this profession. And that latter is the way it needs to be. And if I'm at that table and I hear someone bastardize this, I don't care who it is, I'm going to challenge them. You could do it anything, but not when I'm at this table. You want to bastardize any part of this profession, I'm going to defend it. Because that's what we do. Because here's the funny thing, guys. If someone says, do I believe people can change? Yes. Because I believe in the people that help facilitate that change. Because I work with good people that go above and beyond. So I don't believe inmates can change. I do, because I know the work that people put into it. And then when you start defending that other perspective starts defending you and your role, what your job is. And then you start seeing that we're working together as one. Do you guys know the numbers that we have if we were all together on the same page? The impact that we can have on the community? But instead, we work in this isolated fashion for whatever it is, and I may have a personal issue with you, and now I use that to generalize your department. That's so unfair. Just like if you have a personal issue with me, you're not going to generalize it out to all of custody. That's unfair. We don't want to do that, because the only people that profit from that are inmates who laugh at that divide. If we could come together, the power that we can have in the community is ridiculous. Because then people will be defending this profession out of the woodwork, just popping up all over the place. People that working with program and saying, yo, I couldn't do it without custody. And custody coming out saying, yo, I appreciate what you do with those programs. Now you start seeing that road, the balance between rehabilitation and safety and security, because it exists when we work together. People don't want to see that. They want to keep us divided. You know, everything in corrections is not easy. Everything presents a conflict because it goes against what you want to do. And that's why this profession is not for everyone. You have to make tough choices every day that just go against human nature. I mean, I remember having to deal with a problematic employee, and everything about me wanted to just pull away from this problematic employee. Negativity. Who wants to be around negativity? But in corrections, you can't do that, because then you leave that person alone with the inmate population. So you have to do the opposite. You have to embrace that individual. You have to do what you can to try to bring that individual back into that circle. Because if that person isolates themselves, they present a threat. Same thing here with the balance. The balance comes when we all work together as one, know what the mission is, and know how we have to do it together. And I promise you guys, my belief in this profession stems because, or originates, if you will, because I work with people who are so professional. And when people go to bastardize the system, I say that can't be true. What do you mean it can't be true, Ganj? I work with people that never done that before. I work with people that are not that individual. So it's an unfair generalization. So at one point, I start to think, well, wait a second. If that's what you think of my peers, then obviously you got to be thinking about me in that way. But that's not going to happen. So now it was a mission for me to say, I have to give people as best I could a better understanding of what it is that we do. And for years, you know, kind of reiterating here, but for those that came in late, for years, I always thought that it's about the outside understanding the inside, because we would say the public doesn't know. So if the public doesn't know, we have to inform them. We have to get them to understand. And with that understanding comes respect, I would think. But that's not our case. That's the outcome of something that we have to do first. What we have to do first is respect each other, understand each other, and then go out. Because when I started bringing people in to look at what I wanted to show them, thinking that I had this house that was so clean that, wow, I want you to see what this looks like. Oh, they're picking up the rug, they're checking underneath the furniture, and all they saw was isolated departments. All they saw was people not working together as one. I said, hold on, I think I may have showed off this house too early. Wasn't ready to show off this house. But that's because my vision was so myopic. Now we have a community like this. We chat. We see the bigger picture. And the people that are entering corrections right now are actually far ahead of those in regards to the change, by the way, in regards to those who are in the field currently or have been in the field for a while. Because the people that are in the field for a while are consistent in their way of things. So now you have the new people coming in, they're being trained in a different perspective and they're bringing it in, and together there's a balance. You know, there's a balance, and we don't even have that balance sometimes. You know, we have people that are so resistant to the new people and the old people working together, and we don't realize all these great opportunities that we have that we're presented with that we just throw away. The balance of a rookie and an experienced CO. And instead we isolate each other. You know, this is such a perfect dance. It really is. I know, because I've worked with people that were great senior COs, and I've been a trainer myself, and I know an outcome. I know how great that outcome could be. We can't just throw that away. This department, corrections, really does matter on the people that work it. And if you're not willing to go the extra mile, and you're not willing to, and I know it's tough because you have a lot of people don't believe that the higher ups are going the extra mile for them. But I think that if we started understanding each other's perspective, you know, I'm in management. You know, when I went to Oklahoma, I know I should be ending this soon, but I could chat all day. When I went to Oklahoma, I was the keynote speaker. And before I went on, there were people speaking, and they were talking about how administration is so divided and all this other stuff, not realizing, like, I'm administration. And I looked to the right, and there was an officer from Arizona, I think, and he was getting an award. And who was sitting next to him? His administrator, his warden. So then when you go back and say, hey, listen, you're constantly bad-mouthing and you're encouraging this divide. Did you have a problem with someone? Yeah, my warden's, but that's your person. So you're generalizing that, but look who's sitting next to this officer, and look at me. I'm at a frontline event, and I'm in administration. So what we want to do is we don't want to generalize a concern with one person and automatically think that's the agency or that's the department, and that's how it is, when it could specifically be that one person. And unfortunately, they may not realize how much of a negative light they're casting on the department itself. But the last thing we want to do is be those people that generalize this profession because we have that negative interaction towards that one. And now that becomes our excuse to hate everybody in this profession because the divides are killing us. And I think a way to get above that divide is to really understand the role that each person has to play. If you were to sit down with administration and chat with them, you may understand some of the decisions they had to make. And maybe they would understand why you're upset with them. Roads go both ways. But if we decide not to have those communications, if we decide not to sit at the table and just be adults with it and just discuss what's going on, or I decide to hate you, even though I don't know you, but you have the same title as this person who I don't like, how unfair is that? Because now you may have some person that is not like him, that, or not like her, wants to make a change, but now I don't want to make a change because now I don't like you. I think what we need to do, and I'll end on this, is we need to stop finding reasons to divide and do what makes it hard in corrections. Find reasons to stay together. There's nothing easy in this profession, like I mentioned. So it's easy to promote the divide. It's easy to come in, and I could do a show specifically all day and talk about all this division, and probably my channel would blow up in a heartbeat because it's what people want to hear. But all because you want to hear it doesn't mean it's correct. Doesn't mean that's the way we need to be. So I'd rather have my channel grow slow and just reach its potential through the community that believes in the message of bringing people together, as to have a community that grew fast, built on hatred and animosity and dividing. If we want to grow in this profession, we have to bring people together. And that's why this is hard. That's why it's not for everyone. And I think that's the key in where we need to be. So if you guys get a chance, here's your homework assignment. For those that stayed the extra 5 minutes, find a few people not in your department and ask them what they do. And ask them how what you do affects them. And get to know them. I think that's good. All right, guys. Love you guys. The show is Tier Talk. It's a little late. It's 1 a.m. Thank you guys for joining. I appreciate everything. And, I love you guys. We'll do another live one and, keep these interactions going. I used to do this all the time on Facebook. So I'm glad to find a way to do it through YouTube now. All right. Love you guys. Stay safe. I don't know how to. Oh, now we know how to end it. I got to hit the X.